we're all set.
We'll call the January meeting of the Kikuria School Board to order. And the first item would be roll call. Christie.
Jennifer Bielhaber.
Here.
Angie Agee.
Here.
Tricia Clements.
Here.
Teresa Gander.
Here.
Scott Walter.
Here.
Earl Wallace.
Here.
Janet Mathis.
Here. Affirmation of proof of publication of the agenda.
I'm Doug Olson, hereby certify the notice of the Wednesday, January 13th, 2021 regular school board meeting was published in the Epitaph News on the 7th, posted on the appropriate billboards on the 8th.
Thank you. And how about our agenda?
We are good to go.
All right, so we're good with the agenda. Do we have a
I'll make
motion?
a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that motion.
So that motion was by Earl and seconded by Tricia to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next item would be audience to visitors and board members. We have a presentation of another WASB award to Earl. So, for this one is for 20 years of service. I definitely have another plaque for you too.
No.
And Bonnie's hoping Doug's gonna take a picture so that she can put it in the paper.
I have on the paper.
Every day we get 20 years, Earl, come on.
Not for another 20 years. No, actually, in 10 more years, you'll get another one. All right. Here we go. There you go. That's your name.
You got my name on it, yeah.
Earl, congratulations.
Perfect. 1, 2, 3. You only have to ask you to smile because you can't see it.
And grandpa.
I'm going back.
You gonna give us a speech?
Well, congratulations, Earl. Normally, that would have been presented probably next week at the convention.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, usually on Thursdays, I think they do it.
Yeah.
Or Wednesdays. Thursdays.
Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, Thursday afternoon sessions.
Christie, did we have any other requests to speak?
We did not.
Okay. So we had no requests from community members to speak during audience to visitors and board members. Do any board members have anything? Oh, I guess I would mention congratulations to the girls cross-country team who received an academic all-state award. So that's a very great representation of our school for them to earn that. Okay, we can move on to expense vouchers and receipts.
On page 2, access security, it's monitoring service for our fire alarms and panic buttons and all of that, what that's for. On page 3, Great River Water Treatment, it's kind of an annual come and check, test our children, and all that. And if it needs more treatment than that, and then they gives us a readout and everything. Down about the middle, the TC Networks camera for the track. We've kind of moved one around, so we got the whole track covered and then added another one. And then the winter athletic training services, that's what it costs us per season to have the athletic trainer. Then on P cards, the Christie with the care center, that's the weekend posting for positions. Sam Gary, PayPal pictures, that's the big pictures for the winter sports in the gym, or that of the different team members there. Then Brian Cast, Westby Co-op Creamery, that was for the cottage cheese curds that they handed out, sent out during the, I think it was just before Christmas break or right around in there. Then Besbach oil for DJ was the propane in our tanks to top them off. And then Kent for Chippewa Valley, that's the mat tape with 5 sections of mat, so it takes more tape to tape them now, so that's, and then you always set up 2 complete mats, so we back and forth, clean them and that. And then Greg Smith, Fred J. Miller, that was bell covers and that for instruments and that was split between Crawford and them went together and ordered those, so that is everything I think we could discuss, so.
Thank you, Earl. Were there any other questions? So do we have a motion to approve the expense vouchers and receipts?
Also move.
I'll second that.
That motion was by Scott and seconded by Tricia to approve the expense vouchers and receipts. So we'll do a roll call for that.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhaber,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Okay, motion carries. The consent agenda tonight consists of the minutes from our December 14th board meeting, the December 21st policy committee meeting, and the January 6th buildings, grounds, and transportation committee meeting. Anybody have any concerns or questions there? Thought they looked fine, I guess. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make that motion.
And the second.
I'll second.
So the motion was by Earl and the second by Angie to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving into action agenda. Item A is the elementary basketball programs that need approval.
Yeah, as you can see in your notes, most of the districts that surround us are not anticipating having any competitions. They are trying to allow the elementary programs to practice in their grade level groupings and but not host the play days, which tend to be very busy and very crowded and not consistent with the COVID reality that we're in. And so as I sampled other districts, most were either having a board meeting where they were approving that or had already approved just allowing their grade level teams to practice and allowing kids to work on skill development.
Do we have places for them to practice?
Gym space is always a struggle, but that's just part of, being an elementary coach. A lot of evenings, a lot of working around things, working when the community building is open, can you get in there and get access, so.
We talked about, if we're not doing play days on Saturdays, that might be an opportune time to have some of those practices too, so.
And are the coaches for this still volunteers?
Still volunteers.
And will you do a elementary wrestling, or hasn't there been any talk of that?
Yeah, so to piggyback off of the elementary basketball, Dustin had asked kind of if we would be able to do an elementary wrestling camp type thing where, we don't go to any competition, it's just kind of come in, let the kids do some development and just kind of get used to the math and that sort of thing, so.
The one thing that we'll have to talk about though is that in elementary wrestling, you're taking all the grades and you're putting all the kids together. That would defeat the purpose of doing the things we're doing downstairs, which are grade specific.
Right.
And with basketball, you can keep the grade specific. So elementary wrestling is gonna have to look different than it has in the past if we're concerned about doing this the way we've been doing it. And if we're not, then you can throw it out and have a new plan. But if we're gonna stay with it, elementary wrestling's gotta look different.
But something could probably be worked out
Yeah.
for that, right? It just,
Well, they typically have all the kids at all the grade levels working together and having, depending on how many kids you have interested per grade level, it's gonna be a lot more of a time commitment if Dustin wants to make this work, because if you're gonna do each grade individually, you're gonna be here a lot. So we have to have that conversation.
well, maybe after you look at numbers, maybe each grade doesn't have to be, if you can do 2 grades together or something, just as long as the numbers would allow.
The only difficulty then is, then why aren't we letting two grades go to recess together outside? Why aren't we letting them eat together and if we're gonna let them wrestle?
Well, I'm just thinking, I have no idea how many wrestlers. I'm just thinking if you go to the third grade classroom and you've got 3 wrestlers,
Doesn't make sense.
that doesn't make sense to
Yeah.
have a group of 3. But maybe I'm way off because those little kids, a lot of times, maybe they are more, yeah, we're all gonna go. So,
We've had a lot of elementary wrestlers at times. I mean, he's had a pretty good group. I struggle to give you an estimate of what that is per grade level, but at times you look in there and there's 35 or 40 kids after school for elementary wrestling. So, I mean, it's 8.
We could definitely have a sign up though and figure something out that makes sense for that.
you may have to recruit some volunteer coaches.
Mhm.
But I guess for my part, I would expect them to meet the same requirements. Okay, but this item is just for basketball. So if we're gonna work with all volunteer coaches, then is there some plan for communication and teaching? I don't know if these people have coached other things, so they know what all the procedures are and the cleaning and some
There would definitely be,
oversight of this besides the volunteers.
I think there definitely need to be some education that went on ahead of time in terms of, you know, this is what we're expecting our high school and our junior high coaches to do, so this is what we're expecting you to do. You know, here's the products we use to clean the balls and how to do it, and those sorts of things. And, you know, but yeah, no, they haven't coached things before, so there'd probably definitely need to be some education ahead of time, just so that everybody's on the same page. And we got lots of documentation that would be sent out, of course, too, but it would definitely, I would be more comfortable if come in, okay, here's where everything's at, here's all the regs, here's where they, you know, on and on and on. So, yes, I would say definitely.
That's good, thank you. There comments?
I can make a motion to approve the elementary basketball.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Tricia and a second by Scott to approve the elementary basketball programs. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes.
We do have one board member remotely, so I think we're supposed to roll call.
Oh, you were right. I'm sorry. We will do the roll call. You're right. Action items are supposed to be.
Okay,
Sorry, Jen.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Now the motion passes. All right, item B is the annual determine open enrollment space availability for next year, 21-22.
Yeah, so in talking to Katie Stinson, she looked through the enrollment in our special needs programs as well as the students who are in intervention and indicated she doesn't have any openings in any programs anticipated. If that changes, we can update that, but as of now, when you have to make your decision, the answer would be 0 openings in special education. In terms of regular education, in the past, we've done class size limits. I think last year in January, we increased the class size limits to 45. I think the year before, we had said we wouldn't accept any more kids after 40. So it's really up to the board's discretion. Current class sizes in some of our high school classes around that 44, 45 mark in a few of the grades. Some of the other ones are around 40, and then of course our elementary classes that we anticipate for next year are quite a bit smaller, as we've been talking about for a long period of time. So certainly quite a bit of room at the elementary to accept students. At the high school, whatever the board decides to set as an upper limit is going to have an impact on how many students would be, allowed to come. So I guess it goes back to where does the board feel comfortable in terms of class size limits, and certainly when we made this decision last year, nobody could have anticipated a pandemic, and it does make things harder when you're trying to have everybody back into one classroom and keep distances. We have smaller classrooms, and having big classes doesn't always work that well, but at the same time, this is for next September.
So what is the class limit, right? And what did you agree to last year?
Last year, we set it at 45.
Did we have to turn any students away because of that limit?
We had to turn some away because entire families wanted to come and we didn't have openings in special education and they didn't want to split their kids. But otherwise, we have not typically had to turn a ton of people away.
Before we raised it to 45, though, there were a few years where certain grade levels, we did have.
There was a couple, yes, and there have been a few families, like there was an example this year where we had to deny one of the students, but it was a family of 4 and 3 came, and one stayed in the home district. It's really family specific. You know, it's hard to give you a.
Right.
Every family makes a choice about open enrollment that's individual to the circumstances of their family, so.
Wonder how they handled that, did they draw straws or something?
Yeah. Well,
It was which grade?
Yeah, it's a
There was
grade level
particular
that you have
grade
to turn
level
down.
We could not accommodate.
Yep, and then the other 3 were in grades we could accept, and so.
And 45 is manageable outside of COVID.
Well, I mean, those are the middle school, high school class sizes.
Yeah, I think 45 is a good number.
I have forgotten the name of the program that replaced SAGE, where we had the K through 3.
AGR.
AGR. Is 45 okay for that,
I
or?
don't think we're ever gonna get to 45. in
So
those
now we're in.
grades. We'd have to have like, you know, in some of those grades, we'd have to have like 18 open enrolled kids in that grade, and I don't foresee that.
And
as
it may
well.
be a great problem.
Correct, I would agree with you.
Your questions or comments at all? 45 is the current limit, and Kim, you don't have concerns with that at elementary if we're
No,
to,
I guess it would just,
Depends on the grade level.
yeah,
Yeah, if we get 45 in 3rd grade and it was AGR, we'd have another section.
yeah,
yes.
I guess that would.
But we've had 45 in 4th and 5th grade divided out, it's like 22 per room, and we've done it, all these classes up here, we did that
Sure.
for, so.
That's true. Sounds like we could leave the limit at 45 and then with the. So do we, I forget how this works with the board, we go ahead and actually make the motion with the class sizes in it?
Yes, and that we don't have any openings in our special education programs. And so what would happen is if a student who is included in our current count that has special needs then leaves, then if somebody open enrolls and we have the opportunity, if that spot hasn't been filled by somebody who has moved in, as we get closer to the start of school, we place people on a waiting list and then we tell them, it looks like you have the opportunity to come, so. Just to give you the feedback of how that works. Because we do have a lot of kids that, like any school, that enroll in August, and if you're not anticipating that you'll get kids, then you're probably not doing your job, so we have transfers that happen every year.
Someone like to make a motion on this?
So I'll make a motion that we set our open enrollment at 45 per grade and are unable to accept at the special ed. Is that how we word it?
I'll second.
So that motion was by Tricia and seconded by Angie to set the grade limit at, for open enrollment at 45 and no
Space availability.
space availability in the special needs programs.
You ready?
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Item C is the second payment of shoot away for the basketball program, and we have an attachment for that.
You know, last year in We had purchased 2 of them, paid for 1 of them through the basketball activity fund account. Boys and girls are used for both, and anticipated doing some fundraising, and then COVID came and hasn't left. And so my intent was to hold a pizza sale and much like the music program does, and pay off the second shoot away and be done with it. But the bill is due February 1st, the second payment, and would like to get them their check, and we can figure out when COVID goes away how we can backfill the Griffin funds and do a fundraiser.
Wasn't really anything, anybody's.
But it is a
Thought that happened.
sports related cost, which is Griffin eligible, and we can,
Handle it that way for now.
Yes.
as you say. Questions or concerns at all?
I'll make the motion for providing the second payment for the shoot away basketball program.
I'll second.
So the motion was by Angie and seconded by Tricia to approve the second payment for the shoot away. Christie?
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Okay, that motion passes also. Item D is the calendar adjustment. Oh, the teachers did the in-service day January 6th.
yeah, we didn't want to bring people back and then have a day off after a week of being back. So having delayed the start of the second semester a week, we put the in-service day in before we came back with students, which gives us another in-person face-to-face day, which with the teachers' contracts, we wanted to take the day off the end. So I think Christie has made those changes to the calendar.
Just one little omission, that the pink box on the bottom right doesn't reflect May 31st,
Oh.
no school.
Well, that's Memorial Day
Oh,
and
Oh,
We're out on the 19th.
And we're out, but just in case we adjust more, I put that on there just as a placeholder.
okay.
Yeah, hopefully we're not making up 8 or 9 days.
Yeah.
Something would have gone drastically wrong,
Yeah.
like a flood or something, so I know.
Hi.
I saw you over there, I didn't want to say it.
Oh my gosh, you Ridge Runner, stop that.
any other questions on the calendar?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended calendar adjusted.
I'll second.
So the motion was by Tricia and seconded by Teresa to approve the calendar with the adjustment.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Item E is the 2021 payment to the Village of Iola for the use of the community building.
Yeah, I think Kent had worked on trying to work with some village officials to get the use of the community building for scheduling and practices, and I think they've been doing that for a while now. I don't know how long, a couple weeks, but.
Yep. Yeah, they were just, before, we really didn't have a huge need, because we didn't start junior high until after Christmas this year. So before Christmas, we didn't use it. And then, but now since junior high, high school girls and high school boys are all going on at the same time, we definitely have a use for it, and we did start using it when we came back, so.
Other questions or anything? So we will pay them $800 for the use of the community building. We have a motion to approve that.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
So the motion was by Earl and seconded by Scott to approve payment to the Village of Iola for the use of the community building.
Jennifer Bielhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Item F, the 2020-21 extracurricular advisors for forensics, student council, gifted and talented coordinator, and the math team.
Yeah, I think we had indicated that we would bring them forward as people had plans and how they were going to carry out their activities. Otherwise, there were some extracurricular contracts that just wouldn't take place this school year. So this is a follow-up to those earlier board conversations. I think Aaron indicated that Sarah Wallace will be the only forensics person. We can scratch Lucas off of there. High school student council, Jen, and middle school, James Martin. Math team is Megan Schul, and Ashlyn Coleman has been the gifted and talented coordinator who's working on a lot of the virtual events and attending the virtual gifted and talented coordinator meetings to try to coordinate how they're going to pull off these events and still try to have activities for kids. So.
Any questions at all? Straightforward. Do we have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Go ahead.
All right, Tricia made the motion and
Second.
Teresa seconded, I guess. So go ahead, Chris.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhaber,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. All right, item G, the initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $2 million. And obviously, this is looking forward to the referendum, so we have an attachment on that. This is one of two items that we'll need to approve. Anybody?
Yeah, the bond counsel or the Quarles and Brady, the law firm that works with us, is very particular about how things are listed on your agendas and how they're worded, and they've created the resolutions in order to be legally compliant. So, these are not just language that we put together. It's very specific. The wording has to be contain certain things in order to meet the state laws, so they tell us exactly how to word it.
Questions or concerns at all? We did look at this once before, so. We have a motion to approve this initial resolution authorizing general obligation bonds.
I'll make that motion.
A second.
So the motion was by Tricia and the second by Angie. Go ahead, Christie.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhaber,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. And the second one of these, item H, is the resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of an initial resolution for authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $2 million. And again, we have it attached. One gets a little lengthier, but again, all nice and legal, right, Doug?
Yep. Sometimes they use 1,000 words, you might be able to use 3, but that's the way it works.
Yes.
I get paid by the hour.
Questions at all?
Not by the word.
Yeah. Probably by the word. There are no questions. Do we have a motion to approve the resolution providing for the referendum election on the question.
I can make that motion.
I'll second.
So the motion was by Tricia and seconded by Teresa. Again, Christie?
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Billhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. All right, that motion passes. Item I, determine number of guests allowed at athletic events.
I guess this is just revisiting if the board wants to stay with what they set in the fall, or to alter it. Kent, did you have any additional things to add?
A couple of slight, we've been doing the 2 just like we did in the fall. Everybody conference-wide has been doing that. It's worked very well. At our AG meeting today, we talked about, an idea was brought up by some other schools in our conference that had been approached by their seniors, their senior student body, who were asking if there might be an opportunity for the seniors in the student body to attend a boys or girls basketball game, particularly on senior night. So when you do your senior night, not only do you recognize the seniors on your basketball team, but you also would allow the seniors from your home team to attend that game if they wanted to. And so that was kind of an idea that I thought was kind of neat, just to give the seniors an opportunity to go to one boys game and one girls game. Obviously they're missing out on that too. And so I thought that was kind of a neat idea. So we talked about that. We kind of decided that, as late as it is in the season, some schools have already had their January board meeting, so they're not going to have another one till February. We kind of leave it up to each school to decide if that was something that they were interested in doing or not, based on the space that they have available in their gyms. So that was the side note to our 2 is, so really it'd be the last game of the season, the last regular season home game. If the senior students wanted to attend the game, they would be able to. Here at our school, we'd obviously have the balcony. We could have them sit in the balcony, so they could maintain the distance and that sort of thing. But they'd have a chance to go to the game. So that was just kind of a side note. Other leagues around in our area have been pretty consistent with the 2 fans per player. That's just kind of what it seems like is the most common. There are some schools that have done sort of a 25% of their gym capacity, and then they just, whatever that number is, they divide it by 2, and they say, okay, you get X number of tickets, and we get X number of tickets, and that's just, we don't care who you bring, this is how many tickets you get. But that's pretty rare. So I think the 2 per player is a good spot to be at. That's kind of where the consensus among the athletic directors was. That's a pretty good number to try to manage and not have to, worry too much about spacing. And then, but with that little twist at the end with having the seniors come on the last game. So that's where we fall with the guests at athletic events.
No one's talked about maybe increasing it to 4 per family or per player. My thinking behind that would be, siblings and/or if parents are divorced, allowing both sets of parents or.
Yeah. No, I shouldn't say no. I assume some schools probably are. That didn't come up at our meeting. Everybody was pretty good with the 2, but it's definitely
Part of the difficulty, this came up in our meeting administratively, is that some of the boards approved it at 2, and then to turn around and change it, they're not sure that their board would approve continuing participation if they were gonna then jack up the amount of fans to 25% or to 4. Actually, in some gyms, 4 per student would exceed 25% capacity of their gym. So they weren't sure, like, well, it took us, for some of the schools that didn't participate in the fall, they decided to participate in the winter. The kind of that piece that moved them in that direction was the very limited amount of people that were gonna be allowed in the gym to watch. So there was some hesitation. And then you get back to, like Kent said, for us to allow our seniors to come, we could put them up on the balcony where nobody else is, and it probably wouldn't have an impact on anything else if we allowed that for senior night. But lots of different, and I think, what does the Cooley do? They don't allow you to attend away games, but you get 3 or 4 tickets to home games?
You get 2 tickets,
2, okay.
yeah. And there's another child who has a single parent, so my other son goes on that ticket, so we kind of share. But yeah, you get 2 tickets, but you do not get to go to the away games, but I think that's going to be a topic of discussion because kids are getting hurt. And then it's just the coach there to take care of everything, and the parents have to drive so far.
Yeah. Which is what we talked about early on, that exact scenario of what happens if somebody has to be taken to the clinic for x-rays or something, and you don't allow parents to be there. So.
Yeah, there was a boy who hit his head and he passed out and had to be taken by ambulance. And my son actually broke his nose, but it was a home game, so I could be there. But the coach is trying to take care of his injured player and then also coach at the same time.
Yeah.
So I had volunteered to my husband, I could run over there and help, and he thought that was a mom call. And he was like, no, I'm like, clearly it's an assistant to the coach. But, yeah. You have to have a teammate take care of him. But yeah, that's kind of scary. The incident, I think in Sparta or Toma was a really serious one. And that was a lengthy drive for the parents. So I think that's going to be a topic.
Leaving it to is fine. I was just wondering if there was discussion at all.
There has,
Because you don't want to like push it and make people like, fine, you're not coming at all either.
right, it has been, I just don't know that it's gotten any critical mass, but it has been talked about.
Yeah.
And I think it's becoming more talked about as the numbers continue to, on a weekly basis, drop a little bit. This week is significantly less than last week, the way it's trending. And so as case counts come down, I think people are wanting more.
Yeah.
More ability to watch, more access, so, and that's normal.
But it has been wonderful that all of them are live streams, that people can watch them. You know, there are grandparents, aunts, uncles who can watch who've never really paid attention before. So that's been wonderful by all the schools to do that.
Feelings about the senior night idea?
I like
That's
that.
a good idea.
Pretty cool.
Really good.
I thought it was a good idea too.
Yeah.
Do we need to make a motion or can we just?
Yeah, it's an action item.
Yeah, and we had a motion initially with the two, so it's probably a good idea. Anybody have any other comments about? Can we get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we allow seniors at the senior night for there'd be 3 athletic events on wrestling, basketball. The 2 basketball and wrestling, or is this just basketball?
Yeah, well, the difficulty with wrestling, as we'll get to a little later, is that last date is gonna be hopefully be a quad. And so there's gonna be a few more people here than normal. So I'm not sure if we wanna
I'll just stick with
introduce.
basketball.
Yeah, I think we keep it to basketball.
Okay.
Just yeah.
A second?
Okay, so we had a motion by Angie and, or by Tricia and second by Angie to stay with our 2 tickets or 2 guests per athlete and the seniors attending the last event or senior
Senior
night
night, yeah.
for both boys and girls basketball. Okay, again,
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Veelhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agee.
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
yes. Item K, quarantine timelines, CDC changing some guidance, we have an attachment on that also.
Oh, we missed,
Oh, did I skip J? Sorry about that.
FFCRA.
Yeah, continuation of the Families First, the FFCRA. The federal thing for FFCRA expired on December 31st, so we have to look at what we are going to do.
Correct, and districts have been a little different, how they've done this. Some districts are not approving, continuing ongoing FFCRA leave. Some have approved it, and some have approved it without modifying the original FFCRA leave requirements. They've approved it with all of those similar situations that could occur that would allow you to have leave, but they haven't issued any new leave. In essence, if you've used your existing FFCRA leave, there's no new allotment. Some districts have approved it for hourly employees because many of their teachers or administrators, if they're quarantined, can work from home, but their hourly employees cannot. And so you're seeing a very big range of approvals and reasons. Some districts approved it and removed the provision that was contained within it that allowed you to take leave if your childcare or your school was closed. They approved the other portions of it. And you can do whatever you want because this is not a required leave. This is simply something that the board is considering, and it's voluntary. So any restrictions or modifications that you decide you want to put on it are completely allowable because there's no law that says you have to do it.
So how did we come up with the March 31st end date?
That is sample language.
Okay.
It can go to March 31st. It can go until all of your staff, the majority of them have been quarantined. It can go until the end of the school year. That is just sample language that was drawn up for another school district. So again, this contains, I think, a lot of that language, including the unable to work because of the need to care, whose child care center is closed. That can be stricken. Some districts have done that. It's completely up to the board. I guess it's really around what the intent would be to continue the leave, what your goals are, and then we can kind of fashion the language around that.
We know how much the FFCRA was utilized prior to the end of the year by staff?
We have, so this goes back to March, and we have people who have exhausted their leave, and we have people who haven't touched it. And we have people in the middle who have used a couple days of COVID leave. So it's a range.
And then would this start from scratch potentially for everybody, or if you've already used it, you can't?
That's up to the
That's our
board.
decision.
Yeah,
So
most of the districts I know haven't reissued leave. If they've continued it, they've continued it, but said, we're not gonna issue new amounts of leave.
So if you haven't used your full 10 days, you can
Correct.
finish that off, but if you have, or if you use part of it, that's considered used. So I guess that would be one thing to discuss, what are people's feelings on that? Do we start over, do we?
Gut would say they'll lean towards continuing, so if you've used it or some, that's done, you don't start from scratch, but,
I would agree. It's essentially extending the deadline.
Right.
yeah.
Doug, what rationale the districts that eliminated qualifying event number 4 there? Childcare issues, what was their rationale?
I think they were trying to limit it to what they felt, at least the people I talked to, what they felt was, so you can still take leave if your child is subject to a quarantine order and they're not old enough to take care of themselves. But that if your daycare was closed, I think it was taking away some of the pieces that were really, really difficult to police. And ask people for proof that their childcare was closed or, you know.
And that it was COVID-19,
Right.
COVID related.
And so some of it really felt like, hey, we're gonna have people that are subject to quarantine orders, we're gonna have people, and we wanna respect that, we don't want them coming to work. And we're gonna have people that are, you know, gonna care for their kids who are subject to quarantine orders, and let's continue this leave. And for people that have already exhausted their COVID leave, they may have to use their sick leave. And so, you know, that was some of the thinking. So I do know some districts who have, you know, had decided to, when I was consulting with the attorney, who had decided to issue another 10 days. So it just really, it does run the gamut. The majority of the ones that I spoke to said they were gonna continue it with those caveats. And there was also some extended FMLA leave that was linked to that caring for a child piece that paid you at 2/3 of a rate, so that eliminates that whole piece of that law as well in your bookkeeping department. And so I think that played into that, Scott.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Mhm.
So if the teacher is sent home because their classroom is quarantined, they can continue to work though?
Yes.
At home, so it's not
Yep.
COVID? And then does that work for special ed too? Like, can he?
So that becomes more difficult. We've had some of our classrooms be quarantined, and, you know, there are some activities that can be done remotely. It depends on the students and the population, and sometimes it doesn't transfer quite as well to do virtual work with special needs students. And so, you know, we had one situation where we had an entire classroom quarantined, and the aides had to take some leave time. So, you know, certainly there's things that teachers can do to check in with kids and check in with families, and then that leaves your paras without that ability to work from home. So what we did is set up some of that professional development that we wanted them to do at home, but it wasn't, you know, that many days of professional development, but we tried to give them hours that they could do so that they could count some hours from home. And we also, I think they had some duties set up, if I remember correctly from the conversations, where some of them did some reading with kids and some virtual visits, and but it's all very, very individual based on the needs of the kids and the situation.
Right, and so that was when I was thinking about it, I think that's great. I'm just concerned about Landon not having that opportunity and then losing, because he's already lost, but.
That would be my fear as well, is if somebody came in contact with COVID at the school and then were required to quarantine because of their job and then weren't to get paid for that. I think that, but it sounds like, Doug, you guys have found ways that you're working with people that could fall into that category. So that makes me feel better about it.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the hourly folks that may have had to use their time and they can't work virtually from home to do food service work, to be able to do custodial work, to be able to do other types of work that doesn't transfer to virtual. Some of our paras, their work doesn't always transfer to virtual. So, you know,
Right.
that's the group of individuals that I feel very passionately about extending the FFCRA leave, because, you know, they're going to be subject to a quarantine order at some point. Odds would say that's likely, and we've had a number of our paras, you know, be subject to a quarantine. So,
And that is my fear. And I'm sorry, I thought I was understanding that you were able to allow people like that would fall into that category to be able to do continuing education or to do something else from home, but maybe I misunderstood. If those people that are in the category you just mentioned would be then required to take off work without pay because of being exposed on the job, that I don't feel comfortable with that.
so we have done some of that professional development. The challenge is to find continuing professional development that encompasses 14 days worth of professional development to do at home. And so they've done some of it, obviously, during the last time that they were quarantined, but to continue to find relevant professional development that's quality, that is virtual, and that is access on demand is a challenge.
This may be silly, but is there a way that we can have this apply differently if you're able to work from home versus if you're not able to work from home? Or is
I was
it
just thinking that now.
a legal fiasco of some sort I don't know about?
No, well, that's actually, one of the ways that you can kind of thread the needle, I guess, is that it can be extended to those positions which are not allowed to work virtually. And in that event, you could issue additional hours of COVID leave for people who do not have the opportunity or the availability. For our teachers, we try very hard for consistency purposes. If they either have contracted COVID or they are under a quarantine order, to have them teach from home, and we put somebody in the room to monitor the students so that we have continuity. And so they have that capacity to work from home unless they're very, very ill, in which case or if their child is very ill and they need to care for them, then they have taken a day or two. But most of our teachers haven't exhausted the time. It's a lot of our hourly employees that have used their time, that don't have any additional FMCRA leaves available to them.
I would love if we could find a way to make sure that we're taking care of those people, particularly if it's because of exposure on the job that requires them to quarantine.
And I don't know how we can, if I can ask, I don't know if we can specify that the leave is specific to your exposure on the job.
It'd be really hard to ever prove where your exposure was in most cases, so.
Well, I was meaning
Well,
if we
for
had
a
a quarantine.
quarantine order it is,
Right, but.
but not if you
know that-
contract it.
Right.
Oh,
But
yeah,
for
I
an
just meant
example-
if we had to ask some of our people, like say somebody in the kitchen was exposed at work and then we asked them to go home, right? To quarantine in that situation, I would hate for that person to not be paid.
Right.
I mean, if you get COVID, I agree that you don't know where you got it from, but if we have had a known exposure at school, then we would know why we were asking that person.
Well, I agree, if we could write it in terms of if if their job is not able to be done from home, then I don't know about we extend or.
Give them extra days or hours or
Right.
whatever. Yeah. Because we also don't want somebody to be in a position to say, I need my paycheck.
So I'm
So I'm
gonna
gonna
come
Come
anyway.
anyway, and I'm not gonna tell anyone, and I'm gonna be extra careful and cautious, and, their heart's in the right place, it's just.
So how many days make sense? 10 days?
I think that's what the original was, wasn't it? It was 10 days,
It's 80 hours.
80 hours, so.
So if we do change the quarantine, which we haven't discussed yet, but if we do change that to the newer guidelines from the CDC to the 10 days, that does cover one more, it would exclude the weekend, so whatever weekend that you covered over. Right, so it would be the 10 days of quarantine, but then depends on if you got 1 or 2 weekends in there, that if you could take 2 or 4 days off of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
Are we
I would say
thinking-
minimum of 8 days. Sorry, go ahead.
I was wondering if for like the hourly people, or the individuals who can't work from home, that we would give them an additional 10 days. And everybody else can continue where they were.
That would make a lot of sense. I guess if we wanted to make sure we covered one more quarantine, 8 days would do that. Right? 5 or 7 days. It just depends on where we hit on a weekend. But.
Yeah.
And again, there are no rules on the amount of time. So you can say 40 hours, you can say 80 hours, you can say an additional 0 hours. And, I will ask the school attorney about writing a language specifically to impact those people who cannot work remotely.
Right.
And so we're gonna have to have a little bit of a if-then.
Yep.
And so if we can't split that, how else do we want to write it? Just the continuation of what was? I guess, you know, which conditions, all 4 of them? You want to exclude 4 like many of the other districts have, or do you want to include all 4 potential conditions, including if a school or daycare is shut down? Those are the kinds of things, I guess that we need a little more, I need a little more detail on so that I can ask them to create the policy language the way you want it.
So here's my one thought. If we couldn't do some get this and some get that, we could potentially say everybody gets an additional 10, but we all have but we could give it, the use of it is at the discretion of administration. So then you could say to a teacher, you can work from home, so you can't use, I mean, maybe we set it up that way, is it's allowable to use upon administration's discretion. So then everybody gets the same amount, but I may say to Janet, you can't use it, but Teresa, you can use it.
So
Because you have
the
another
difficulty
option.
with that is we will not be able to tell you whether you're sick. So if you have COVID
Correct,
and you're underneath an order.
Yep.
You know, we can't tell you that you have to work from home and when you feel well enough to start
I see, I
teaching.
see,
We
okay.
can't control that. And
Gotcha.
I don't want the
Yep.
responsibility
yep. I
to make that
If
decision.
we can't do the 2 thing
Yeah.
split, I would guess they're not gonna wanna, we're not gonna wanna be doing that either, because
Right.
that's just like a way to do it without
Yeah.
officially saying you're doing it. So if we're allowed to do the split for people who would be able to work remotely, or for which you have something they can do remotely, are we all agreed that we're okay with giving the new, say, 80 hours? If you can't work remotely, and if you are able to remotely, we just let you continue what you haven't used? I'm just asking on that part. If we're, okay, so then if that's not all right, and we have to have one blanket policy that covers everybody, now what do we do?
Well, and how long are we extending this?
Oh, okay,
Is another piece of this. Again, some districts said March 31st because the anticipation is that the vaccine will be distributed to those in 1B before the end of March, thereby terminating the benefit at that time because it is voluntary, so some districts have done that.
if we write it as March 31st, there's nothing saying we can't come back at our March
Correct.
meeting and say we're gonna
Right.
extend
You could extend it
to the
again,
school
yep.
year, right?
You could.
Okay.
And some districts have just adopted language that says it will be in effect until such time as we determine that it won't be in effect.
That's,
So
She's the 31st.
I think it's
some have
really
said to the
important
end of the school year. I'm sorry, Jen.
I would say I think it's really important to have until the vaccine is available to our teachers.
And then on my last call, just to confuse it a little further, somebody, we were talking and the question was asked to the attorney, could we make the provision of leave contingent upon your vaccination? And the answer to that is yes, you can, because this is voluntary offering of leave, it's not required. And so if you only want to extend it to those individuals who are getting vaccinated, now you have to have an out for those who have a medical excuse not to be vaccinated. But other than that, that is another allowable. I'm not suggesting we go there, I'm just saying that that was kind of the natural progression of people's thoughts.
it is, but the other one, we want to do a double check on that, because on that WSB webinar thing, they said, right now, both of the vaccines are under emergency use authorization. So it's I forget what, CDC rules or something. And there has to be an option to, I'm just wondering if that would complicate requiring it, because you have to have an option for people to just say no.
Well, it doesn't require it. You are offering a voluntary leave, or a voluntary benefit, and it ties the voluntary benefit to being vaccinated. And that was what the attorney specifically stated. You are not required to do this leave, so you can put conditions upon it. Now, obviously, if somebody is advised due to severe allergic
Right.
reactions not to take it, you wouldn't want to prevent them from getting the additional leave. But if you just have somebody who says, no, I think the virus is fake and it's a hoax and I'm not going to be vaccinated, why would you give them an additional 10 days of leave? And it's available.
I
to them.
agree
So
with that.
That's another place that people have gone and talked about is, do we tie the two together? You certainly can if that's something that the board would choose. Certainly not there's lots of different pivot points within this sort of language. Do you include all of them? How long do you do it? Do you tie it to vaccine?
I do like the March 31st, and if we're getting close to that point and we feel that not everybody has the opportunity to get vaccinated, I think we as a board
Then
in
we
March can
to
extend
this-
it. So I do like that sunset date for now.
I agree, and I'm sitting here thinking about one little wrinkle, I'll just throw out for discussion. I don't know if it's really worth thinking about, but, the issue is this falls disproportionately on some staff, right? They've got lots of kids, they face multiple quarantines, but the economic hardships of not getting a paycheck is real. So I wonder if staff couldn't donate unused leave to a particular staff member who's going into their third quarantine period and really struggling. This is done oftentimes with, say, sick leave for folks that are going through serious medical. It's
And we have a
complication.
policy for that, but
We typically, actually, we don't have that in our handbook any longer.
We
We
don't,
took
okay.
that out when the contracts ended in 2010. But when there is a situation, typically we bring it to the board and ask approval for donations, and we've done that in the past, and then we send it out to staff and people donate days. Now, there is some discussion on some of the WASBO threads, that donation of sick days can be considered sometimes a taxable event, which then turns into a whole bunch of bookkeeping problems. But I don't know where that's gone. There's been kind of an internal WASBO discussion about the donation of sick leave.
So maybe that's not a complication we want to entertain with this leave, but I just think about that one staff person, or those 5 staff people who are just unlucky. They get it and then their kids get it, and pretty soon they're not getting the paycheck, and they didn't do anything wrong and we want to retain them. But they're facing this hardship, whereas the other teachers down the hall haven't used any, and they're sitting on unused leave that could benefit that person.
The hard thing is if you end up getting it, you donate it, if I donate to you and then 2 weeks later I get it and then I don't have enough. Because I think about the big families, because if either of our households got it, we might be locked at home, our dogs, for a long time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
All right, so do we have agreement on a sunset of March 31st? And if we have to come back and address it, we have the opportunity to do that. And take one off the table.
Yeah.
What about the qualifying events? Do you want to keep them as it's written now in current law, or do you want to modify that?
I'd be okay with eliminating number 4. Other districts have, but
What did you say? Eliminated or?
eliminating it,
Mhm.
but that's, just my thought.
Has that been an issue in the district where childcare facilities have closed recently?
Yeah, maybe it doesn't apply to us quite as much.
I think it's been a little bit more about school being closed. I think we've had a couple of people that have been impacted by that. A couple employees that have made requests for, I'm not saying that other people haven't been impacted by that. Let me say that differently. We've had a couple instances where people have requested COVID leave through FFCRA because the school where their child goes to has been closed.
And was that allowable?
I think it's been a hardship for a lot of people. I just wanted to change my language there. We've had a couple of instances where people have requested it, so.
My only thought, if we would eliminate it now, we've then had people who have been able to utilize it, and now it comes up for somebody else.
And they've got the
Well, how did
same
that
leave
work?
left anyway. Especially if we're not extending it, if we're just, that's a really good point, Eric.
Yeah.
If we're just letting them finish off what they have, then you're right, that's a very good point.
I'll leave it on.
But
So I
again,
guess it comes back to.
it's voluntary. You guys are creating language, there's no requirement for you to do anything. Right now, it doesn't exist.
Right. It just seems fair to leave it on.
Right. So what I'm kind of hearing is that just correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to summarize. Ideally, we want people to continue to work from home remotely if they can. And we, as administrators, are facilitating that every single time we're faced with this, for a lot of reasons. Consistency in the classroom. I think that if we're going to approve it, why don't we approve it until March, using the existing law with the sunset date of March 31st. Now, the last question is, do you want to approve additional leave? Or do you want to just approve it as, you had this 80 hours, if you haven't utilized it yet, you continue to have it?
How many people are completely out that do not have the ability to work from home?
I was afraid you were gonna ask. I want to say that we have less than 5 that have completely used all of their COVID leave.
Sounds right.
Right? I mean, you're probably thinking of the same people I am, I think we know.
And these are people who cannot work remote.
Well, there's a teacher in there that's out of leave, but I think most of the other situations, there are people that are hourly. And there's some that have used some of the leave, but not all of the leave, so they're not out, but they might be close, because they've taken maybe 5 or 6 days, so they would be included in that 5.
Okay.
Most of our teachers have really exhausted a day or two, where, if they've contracted COVID and they've been ill and haven't felt right to be able to teach, they don't teach on that day. And then when they felt better, they join the class remotely and taught from home. So it's not a very large portion of people that have exhausted all of their leave.
And how many days does everybody get at the start of a year, like all full-time employees?
Your regular sick days.
Yeah.
1 a month, depends on how many months of the year you work.
I guess I'm starting to lean more toward allocating each staff an additional 80 hours. Again, just thinking that just by the luck of the draw, some staff encounter this hardship more than others. And the fact that they've exhausted it, as long as it was a valid use, their child was quarantined, they were quarantined, allocating them some additional hours is a little bit of a incurred cost, but we've got additional CARES funding coming.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think, to support those staff, I'm not against allocating additional hours.
I agree, and I think it's one of the least things we can do. I mean, it's been a brutal year for our teachers and our staff and the whole school district staff. And I think it's one way that we can show kindness and generosity to our staff right now.
Okay. So until March 31st, an additional 10 days, I hate to say 80 hours, because if you're part-time, it's prorated, so it's an additional 10 days of your number of hours you work. And all 4 qualifying events that are listed underneath that section.
And then the one little tweak in that policy under benefit, it says right in the middle of that paragraph, it can be taken in increments of X days or hours. Do we want to leave that up you, or do we want to clarify that? 4 hours, full day?
So every school district is different. We request people to take leave in increments of half days. So
That's fine.
some districts, believe it or not, go to the 15-minute mark. And that creates, in the time off system, that creates a mess.
Half days.
So is everybody thinking about the extension then?
To all employees?
I would say all employees, I guess.
Okay, just want to make sure I get that right in there.
So do we even want to look at whether we can have two
Right,
Zooms or just go with, extend it to everyone?
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking.
Extend current balances or
Well,
additional?
let me ask now, do we say everybody just goes back to starting with 10? Or do we, if you've got some left, is this?
I think you should reset it to 10. I don't think you should add an additional,
I
We're
agree.
only
a new
talking
provision of
2.5 months.
10 days.
Right,
Right,
right.
we need to say
Because
that.
right now we're only, yes.
Yeah.
So we just reset everybody to 10 days. I think that sounds good.
I agree.
Annie, are we missing anything, Doug?
I think I'm good. I think I know what I'm working with. Yep. And so with that language intent, which I've tried to capture in my notes, I will fashion that to say that, and we will adopt that into how we roll forward till March 31st, if somebody makes a motion and.
Don't leave yet.
I'll make that motion that we drafted according to our discussions.
I'll second that.
So I have a motion by Tricia and the seconded by Jen to draft the district-sponsored COVID-related leaves of absence, basically in line with our discussion here. That administration to do.
You ready?
Yes.
Scott Walter.
Thanks for putting me first, yes.
Earl Wallace.
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhaber.
Yes.
Angie Aggie.
Yes.
Tricia Clement.
Yes.
Teresa Gander.
Yes.
Janet Matha.
Yes. All right, motion passes. Okay, item K, quarantine timelines.
So the CDC before Christmas had sent out revised timelines for quarantine orders as a potential option. They include 7 days, 10 days, and 14 days. I know that the county has published those on their website, and it's created quite a bit of buzz when people undergo quarantine orders. They ask if they can return to work, and they return to school. And the answer from the county is that, that depends on your school, that depends on your work. And so everybody is, kind of adopting a different policy. I know some workplaces have adopted 7 days with that negative test and you can return to work. If you were exposed and you don't have symptoms, you get the negative test, you can return to work. Many school nurses feel like 14 days is the gold standard. And, if you're released from quarantine early, as I indicated in that chart that I sent you, there is a risk that you could contract it after 7 days. There's a risk you can contract it after 10 days. And yet there's still some very, very small risk that you could contract it after 14 days, 0.1. So really the discussion tonight is what is an acceptable risk? We've had this discussion before, if we're gonna modify a quarantine order. Some of the discussion from the school nurses group has been that the release from quarantine early is dependent upon you being able to distance yourself from other people. Well, we know that if you're involved in athletics, if you're involved in other kinds of things, you're not really able to quarantine or distance yourself effectively as part of your job. If we go back into session full-time with all of our kids, when our gating metric reaches that level, if you're subject to a quarantine order, it's much more difficult to maintain 6 foot space. If you come back early from a quarantine order, it's not really possible. So all those factors come into play. And, we have asked for some uniform guidance from the county, it'd be nice if we had a public health statement on what all schools in Vernon County should do, and we could adopt it uniformly, and we were met with a high degree of resistance to provide any sort of guidance as to what should be done, because really it's a local decision and you will decide that yourselves. So here we are discussing another public health question with all of you public health experts to make a determination for our school district, what is the best course of action in a public health emergency. And I felt like, you know, if we pull up the data sheet, what incremental value are we getting? So there's some context to this conversation too, right? So if I want you to envision yourself in a scenario where your child is subject to a quarantine order and so is the teacher because they were exposed. And we adopt a policy that says that I can get our staff a PCR test on day 9 and I can have the results on day 10 and they can come back after 10 days. But because I can send a person asymptomatic to get tested as an employer, but if you as a parent want to get your asymptomatic child tested so they can end their quarantine early, good luck. Because the availability for you to get the test, and then there's an expense associated with the test. Until the antigen saliva tests become commonplace and available and able to use in a very fast format, I don't know that providing the same option to parents to end the quarantine early is going to help them. But if we build it into policy, there is a state website where you can order your own free saliva test. You have to Zoom with a physician while you do it, so they can watch you, or a PAC, and then you send it in through FedEx or whoever, and then they send you your results through electronic format. But I don't know of how much additive value that gives a parent to try to end a quarantine early, whereas as an employer, you know, if I pay for that test, that's the equivalent of 1 sub day, and I get 3 sub days that I don't have to have a sub in there potentially, if the quarantine order falls where there's 3 more days after that.
And we can have 1 period for teacher staff and 1 for a different one for students.
I would just like to have 1 for ease of administration. And I know that it will be difficult for some parents to get access to a test, but maybe in the future, access to testing won't be so difficult. And I guess that the reason I included the chart is obviously the PCR test. And if you look at, if you sit out 10 days, the chances of you do your quarantine for 10 days, the chances of you still having COVID is 1.4% and per median. No testing. And if you get the antigen testing, it reduces the risk by 0.3. I don't know if that's enough to say that we should be moving in that direction, or should we be saying, 14 days is it, that's the gold standard, that's what the nurses want to see, that's what we're going with. But, if you look at us PCR testing our staff at day 10, it's 0.3, and 14 days is 0.1. So the extra value there of waiting the 4 days is 0.2. I would say we would want our staff back, because that's not a lot of change. You get a PCR test and we can get that for our staff. So I don't know if we can have a 2-pronged approach, is what I'm saying, is that, our staff is going to be quarantined for 10 days with a definitive PCR test, and we're sticking with 14 for our kids, or?
Well, or you can write it the same way, but they still have to have a test to come back after 10 days then, right?
Right, and I don't know how they get the PCR test at this
We
point.
could write it that way, but it's not gonna work for them, so they're gonna end up being 14 days. But if we really want the staff to be back, then I guess that's what we do, is you say you have to have a test, because.
The 7 days obviously exposes with a lot more risk, and I just didn't feel like that. I wanted to show you the data, but I just didn't think that was.
So according to the CDC, the 10-day is not including a PCR test. So the PCR test is after 5 days is the beginning that you can start doing it, up to 7 days. You need to have a PCR test for that to come back. negative, and then at 7 days with a negative PCR test that's taken within 48 hours, you can be out of quarantine. The 10-day one is without, it has to be symptom-free. You cannot have developed symptoms within those 10 days. You have to be showing no signs of all of the symptoms that you could potentially show to be having COVID, and then you're out of that quarantine. So the difference though, if somebody were to try to get a PCR test at day 6 or 7, by the time they get the result, they're probably at day 8 or day 9 at least anyway. And so a different committee that I'm on that deals with this COVID stuff, the feeling where we are, where it's so rural and so challenging still to get tests. I mean, we're still not testing well at all where we live. So because of that, the 10-day is a more viable option. Now that my understanding, and Doug, maybe you have some other insight into this, but my understanding from the reading I had done is that the reason the CDC has come out with this is even though the 7-day and the 10-day thing are nowhere near as good, they're not the gold standard of the 14-day. The great thing about them is that people are more willing to comply because it's more doable. So in the past, people felt 14 days was just too much, and therefore they didn't do any quarantining, or they didn't implement any of these policies either at their work or for themselves. So this is sort of a compromise that allows you to catch perhaps more people because they become more willing to do that. So I think that the 10-day would be the lowest that I would feel comfortable doing, particularly because testing is so hard to get at this time. If we were to get to a place where our counties were offering testing regularly with quick turnarounds, then that would be a different discussion with the 7-day, in my opinion, but I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks.
Well, I guess I agree. The way you outlined it here, Doug, makes a lot of sense, and it's in line with the CDC, the revised guidance, 10 days. And looking at the numbers, I think for staff and students requiring a test to return, and if students can't get a test, then it's 14 days. Then those numbers come down.
I guess my question would be, are people comfortable with, allowing either a PCR or the antigen test in order to return after a 10-day quarantine? As those become more available, is that something we're gonna consider? Because right now, an asymptomatic person subject to a quarantine order who doesn't have an employer who's paying for the test is probably not going to be tested. And if they are, it's going to be a National Guard testing site where it's a group test and it's gonna take 2 to 3, 4 days to get your results back. If I send an employee up, I can get that back in 24 hours.
So what's
So I
the
can send them
rapid
up on day
test
9.
that people
I'm
talk
sorry.
about? The rapid test does that fall under one of these two testing?
Yeah, that's, I think,
Rapid is the antigen, that's the same thing. They are not as good as a PCR test, nor near as good as a PCR test with the results that come back. But yes, rapid
Other
is,
schools are using those to determine whether or not their kids can participate in school or sports.
yeah, they are becoming
They are.
more frequently used, yep.
I guess I'd be looking at, the fact that we're looking at medians here, even though the range, if you look at the 10-day with an antigen test, goes up to 9.5, that's relatively few individuals.
The median is
So
1.1.
I'd be happy with either test in a 10-day quarantine period.
That's it, that's an easy policy to put on our website, and I want it to be easily understood and easy to follow through, so.
so I can't believe I'm arguing for this, but the CDC is a little bit more lenient. Just the 10 days, I just want to make sure we do want to do the 10 days and a PCR or negative antigen test. Just because my understanding is that the 10 days is without symptoms and then you could return. So I like the idea of a test. I just want to make sure that we all feel comfortable surpassing slightly what the CDC is
And
saying.
just to throw in too, again, this was another one out of that WASB webinar that I'd have to check on this, but if I remember right, if they come back after 10 days, we do have more liability and more responsibility to monitor them, to make sure they are symptom-free and remain symptom-free for the rest of that time. And that was one of the reasons they were kind of cautioning people on that. They also mentioned, like with athletics, that you could still enforce 14 days for that, even if you let them return to a classroom where that was more easy to keep distance. And they still needed distance. So as long as we're cohorting, I guess we'd be okay that way.
And that was the big discussion point, as I mentioned, with the school nurses was, as part of that quarantine order that, you know, between day 10 and day 14, you stay distant from other people. But once we go back with all of our kids here, that's not possible. That's not going to happen.
So then we would really need a test, or we'd have to go to 14 days anyway?
If our intent is to, you know, follow the, but again, you have to remember that they're relying on you to do it.
Yep.
If this was a law, if this was a you have to, it would be easy because we would be just doing it. They're asking you to make public health policy.
So you're saying, I just want to clarify with the whole quarantine for 10 days and have to have a test to come back to school. So we have right? Is that what you're saying?
That's the suggestion.
So that means, like what happened this fall, is if you quarantine an entire class, or let's say 20 kids out of that class because they had a possible exposure, they have to have a test before they can come back to school.
Or they have to wait the 14 days.
Or the 14 days.
If you want to come back after 10, you have to have a test.
I just want that to be
Right, so-
clarified, because that wasn't, yeah.
A lot of people are probably gonna wait the 14 days because right now the accessibility to get to tests is pretty limited. Unless you're an employee and we want you back.
Right.
We can send you up on day 9, get you tested, and when your quarantine's over, we can bring you back.
Can I be fickle?
You can,
Sure.
please, I'm just looking for,
Just looking at these numbers again, what would you guys think of just a 10-day quarantine period? Symptom-free, 10 days, no test required, because
the values,
test-
yeah.
the
0.3%.
yeah, I mean, it's,
And that's what I was wondering,
Right.
because
Go ahead.
I just look at how difficult it may be for some parents to keep them at 14, and if the CDC was doing this with the intention of, 10 days is much easier to do than 14, are we going to get more compliance if we have a little bit of give there?
That's a good point.
Precisely why they did that.
Yeah.
Well, and I just look at the PCR testing after day 10, it shrinks your range and it also shrinks your median. It just makes the possibility of you having a post-quarantine transmission very small. It takes it and just, but again, asking people to try to get a PCR test for an asymptomatic kid, it's not gonna happen. I mean, and if you do get it, you're gonna have to hit your quarantine period with when the National Guard is doing free testing, and you're gonna have to align the stars,
Right.
like, oh, look at that, they've got
You
one
need
this
to have
week,
a
it's
certain
perfect.
range of data.
And then you hope
So-
that there's only 60 people who got tested that day, so you get your results fast.
Right, there's 20 in
And
your
we're
class.
under the assumption as well, on top of that, going back to the situations that happen, that we are told you wear a mask, you're trying to social distance, you should be barely,
Low risk.
you should be very low risk, right? So if you're quarantined because you have a possible exposure and you all had a mask on, I just am having a hard time saying you can't come back to school without a test. So at that 10-day, I'm saying I'm more in the agreement of 10 days.
Oh,
If you're symptom-free, you can come back without a test.
And I'm
because
getting to that point too. I'm just curious what a possible exposure is. This is not something from the health department that says you've had is that something different than a significant exposure?
Yeah, we had, I'm just using that example, our freshman class at one time had 9 kids in it. Just because one kid in the class was because he was in the classroom with them. Well, that's not a single kid got sick from that possible exposure. I'm just showing you that as
But that was a positive test, so yes, that was then an exposure.
but nobody from that class got sick because they all had their masks. I mean, that's what you have to believe, that our government is telling us, you wear a mask, we have a low risk of contracting it, we're washing our hands. So I'm just saying, we were there, why are we putting more scare and, more, hurdles up when, let's get them back and.
But we also have to capture that with the idea that sometimes COVID runs through an entire family after they've been exposed. And everybody in the whole family gets it. And I've seen situations where a husband or wife has it and the spouse doesn't get it. So You could be quarantined as a result of a home exposure where you're not wearing a mask and you are not distancing and you're,
Right.
you know, so I don't think we get to thread the needle on the case. And I don't want the responsibility to go, well, I've got some questions about your exposure, Scott. And with this, I'll tell you how long your quarantine's gonna be when I get done with my list. I don't want that. We have to have some uniform policy. And it's gotta
But I
capture
think-
all of them.
Right.
Did I misunderstand though? You're saying 10 days
10 days,
is
no testing.
sufficient, right? 10
Yeah,
days, no
10 days is
testing.
sufficient.
But using the
No
example that
symptoms.
you could
Yeah.
be exposed, and it doesn't mean you're gonna get it, but it depends on where you're exposed. You have a higher likelihood of getting it if you're exposed in your home, when you're living with
Right.
somebody and sharing living quarters, than you are if you're just exposed as part of the school.
Right.
I don't want the responsibility to start double checking why you're on quarantine and why the health department has asked you to stay home. And then say, oh, well, that one could have a higher risk associated with coming back after 10 days than somebody who had a brief exposure in a classroom and they were masked and they're washing their hands and their distance. Those are different. But I don't wanna be sorting
Those
that
are
out.
different, but that's what I'm saying, if it would, I guess there's gotta be. So if you know so you're saying if you're gonna quarantine an entire class because of a possible exposure, when you know that that's where the possible exposure happened, that's what I'm just explaining of. It happened here, you know it happened here, you're gonna say you all have to stay home for 14 days unless you get a test.
But I think
Just
that's what we're
throwing
trying
that
to
out, that,
figure out. Is it 14 days or is it 10? And do you have to have a test if you do 10?
right, that's what.
Teresa, to answer your question, yes.
Using it as an example, I'm for saying the same thing, 10 days, and then you can come back to school after 10 days, you're symptom-free without the test. I'm agreeing, I'm just giving you examples of why.
And I understand
Yes,
that, and I was
yes.
giving an example as to why it wouldn't work.
Jen, go ahead.
No, I'm trying to say to Teresa, yes, what you're asking, then that is correct. Because an exposure is 15 minutes of time, cumulative over 24 hours. So you can have 5 minutes here, 2 minutes here, 1 minute here, as long as it adds up to 15 minutes within 6 foot of somebody who tested positive for COVID, even with a mask on. Even if you are 6 feet and have a mask on and you're 15 feet within, 6 feet, for an accumulative time of 15 minutes over a 24-hour period, somewhere in the 48 hours prior to getting a positive test or after you receive the positive test, you are considered a close contact. And it's great that class happened to not get that, but that does not always happen. I've seen many, many situations in a different area where I'm involved with COVID where that happens and everyone gets it. So, not everyone, we've had up to almost everyone. So I'm glad that worked out that situation, but I do think that we need to have these measures in place for the worst case scenario in a sense. So like Doug was saying, if you've got somebody who's at home or some kid whose parent has it and tested positive, we need to know that we're keeping the other kid safe. And that's where the 10-day, to me, doesn't matter if it's at school or if it's at home.
But if I get it, my children's quarantine doesn't start till I'm at either day 10 or day 14, depending what the health
And
department
then theirs
tells me.
starts, yep.
And then
Unless-
theirs start.
Unless you can separate from them, which is impossible from home.
No, I don't know
Yeah, I
how we
was
could
forget
hold
about that part, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And
10 day.
part of the hard is the health department will call you up and say, Janet, okay, your test is positive, so you need to quarantine and you need to notify all your close contacts. You know, so that's on you to do that. I think it's still happening that way. I know for a while that's what was happening and I thought it was still happening because they didn't have time to call all those contacts. And so some of it that is kind of, you know, on your honor to follow through and let those people know that. I appreciate, you know, like when the situation that Teresa talked about, if there was a possible contact, I appreciate getting everybody out of there. I think we've done it a few times in the elementary too, that could have potentially had contact, just because I'd rather have everybody go home for 10 to 14 days, whatever's decided, than have a kid after a kid after a kid after a kid get it. And I think to Teresa's point, that's where I think if it's a situation like that, and I know you guys can't police that, that's where 10 days seems very appropriate. I think that's what you were trying to say.
Yes, that's what I was saying.
But I'm comfortable with the 10 days no test. Because I think if we're gonna say 10 days and a test, by the time you guys get the test, we're
Probably
at 14 days
14 days.
anyway.
How do we monitor that people do not have symptoms 10 days and symptom-free?
I think it's
By the way, I'm in
honors-
agreement with the 10 days. I just was just asking.
And I think it's an honor system, just like if I have COVID, nobody here at school is gonna know unless if I call the school and say my kids aren't gonna be coming because I'm positive. We're trusting that people are gonna be doing the right thing.
Our nurse actually calls everybody.
I was just gonna say, so in the situation where our girls, because of the
Yeah.
other school having a positive,
We were all
Trish
notified.
checked in with us each
Yep.
day,
Yeah.
so she would do that
Mhm.
for a
She
while.
tries, yep, she tries to do it every day, she
Mhm.
tries to call people, and if it's not every day, it's, calling to check in, to make sure, to reinforce, to tell you, remind you again when you come off, I mean, that's part of what she views her role as in her position, because, she wants to make sure that our school is as safe as it can be, so.
And she would also put,
Today is a great day to
today's
bake
a great
cookies.
day to be a Panther, today's sunny outside, I hope you can get outside and stuff. Yeah. She also, spread, cheer that way, but yeah, she checked in every day, so if it's the same,
It just depends on how many people are
Right,
quarantined, it might be
right.
every other day if you get 2 big batches of kids or whatever, and.
but that was,
limited
well, how many
time.
girls are on the basketball team?
I think she was able to do a mass email.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
would
so
have
that
seen
should be
but
fairly,
she's
Yeah.
But she has been doing a lot of phone calls too.
okay, but either way, Jen, there's a system to be able to, right now,
Sounds
figure
wonderful.
out symptoms.
All right, so what I'm hearing is 10 days, no test.
I would agree.
Yep.
Do we have that? We have that motion?
Yes. We don't yet, but we will in a few seconds,
All right.
hopefully.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Tricia and seconded by Scott to set the quarantine timeline as 10 days of quarantine. What was the other part?
Symptom-free, no test.
No testing.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Vealhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question before we move on? Trish's name came up. She should be on list 1A, right? Can we
Oh, our school
facilitate?
nurse.
I
Yeah,
think they would have got, I think they got them, because I talked to some of the other health nurses today
She
and
did.
they got them.
she's been contacted, but
Good. All right, and then one more action item. Set the graduation date.
Yeah, so we've discussed this, I think at most meetings for a while, and I don't know exactly what graduation's going to look like with everything, but I think we're at least a little more concrete right now to at least have a schedule and a calendar so that people can plan. When we looked at it, due to the fact that we started early, to push it all the way back to Memorial Day weekend is a pretty big gap in between. To try to do it May 14th is, I think, pretty early in that respect, so we thought May 21st, which the rest of the kids would get out on the 18th. So basically, we'd say the seniors would be done May 14th, and then we'd have graduation on that Friday night, the 21st. So again, depending on, I think in my mind right now, thinking just with all the variables, the gym is probably a really good option, but again, depending on, where things are at and whatever, we can look at making changes to that, but I think having a date for parents to plan and people to plan and kids to plan is important. So if nobody has any objections, I think the 21st is probably the best date to go with.
Questions, comments, or a motion, I guess?
I'll make a motion that we, at this time, recommend May 21st as our graduation.
I'll second that.
Okay, so that motion was by Earl and seconded by Tricia to set the graduation date for Friday, May 21st.
Jennifer Vealhaber,
Yes.
Angie Agi,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes. All right, motion passes, and we'll all keep our fingers crossed and hope that it is May 21st and we can all be there. All right, we have some discussion items tonight too. Pep band. Mr. Smith is asking for consideration of pep band performances at basketball games.
Pretty self-explanatory. I think some of the conversations regarding performance for, the choir, for band, for the pep band, is around that music is also a performance-related thing, and we've approved basketball and other sports throughout fall and winter. We really haven't had a discussion about how the students who are in the arts get an opportunity to perform in an environment or controlled environment. And so, in the future, underneath superintendent's report, I've got some potential dates and thoughts on how we could run safe concerts for our music programs. But the first thing Mr. Smith had brought was, is there any opportunity for the pep band to be able to play? And if we played, we could play up on the balcony and be away from everybody and then leave. We just want the opportunity to play. Kids practice, and it's going to probably be more important as we get closer to bringing all the kids back in the building, so the band actually has an opportunity to practice together, because it's been a long time since they've all been in the same space. So.
I had a question though. This wouldn't be required of anyone, right? It can't be included in their grading, or they can't be required to come and perform in that setting. So if parents did not feel comfortable having their child do that, there would be
right. And I think originally Kent and I originally kind of just put the brakes on the idea because nobody was doing it. And at first our idea was, let's let athletics start and let it work before we add another variable. And people are signing up and they know that there's 2 tickets and they know how many people are going to be in the gym. And before we add another variable such as playing music and, some level of aerosols are emitted from playing instruments, but some level of aerosols are emitted with people exercising as well. How do we add another variable before we're comfortable with that? And at this point, we've seen some good success with running the athletic activities, and some schools have taped the pep band and allowed them to, tape themselves and then played it during the beginning warm-ups and during halftime, and it's not really quite the same, but that's how they decided to try to thread the needle on that. At this point, because we do have a balcony space and people of the band can be removed from people, the request is, can we play a few pep band?
Would we do beforehand and halftime, or just beforehand and have them leave? How would that be done?
I think any way we want it to be done. I think they just want the opportunity to play.
So are they all together when they play? And obviously they can't wear masks.
Well, I think we can get some distance from them.
If we get the balcony, they can certainly spread out.
And we can make that a contingency.
It would just be that senior night. Don't want to have them together probably.
Right, yeah, we'd have to skip that night.
Yeah.
But
otherwise, I see his point.
Sure would be nice to take that step back toward normalcy, but, there's more people in there. If they're playing a woodwind or whatever, they're not wearing a mask, and it's just an additional risk.
I agree, it'd be nice to get them up there.
Yeah.
Then another wrinkle that I thought of, do they get 2 tickets too? Are their parents gonna come at least to hear that part, or no?
No,
Drop them off
I think
and wait for them?
that would be something that we're working on in terms of music concerts, which are separate.
Okay.
And then
So there'd be an opportunity at that.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Do we need to worry about the aerosolized? I mean, if we don't, that'd be great. I just want to throw it out there. I mean, if we already have athletes running, we probably already have the aerosolized droplets. I just know that some colleges and schools were specifically not doing band because of the aerosolized droplets that could carry COVID-19. And if we don't need to worry about it, or if we are choosing not to worry about it, I should say, because we've already chosen to do sports, then that's totally fine. I'm just,
Well, the thing I like is we have that upper area where they could separate.
And if they play beforehand and then leave, they're,
Yeah.
I think the difficulty that we will run into is we haven't cleared this with any of the other schools as part of our athletic
yeah,
protocol.
that's a good point too.
Is that we haven't
Should-
said, hey, we're all doing this, or we're doing this, and then their school is coming and gonna say, well, we might be okay with it, but are the schools who are playing us going to be okay?
Definitely something that would need to
It's
be.
a,
And I feel better since you're mentioning that we have some plans that maybe there will be some performance opportunities. So maybe some of those would be a better avenue for your performance than this.
and maybe we ask them to record it, we play the recording like most of the other schools to stay consistent with what we said we were gonna try to limit. I don't know,
We
Yeah.
just had a discussion earlier saying we limit people in the gym.
Yeah.
Not saying we can have more people playing an instrument.
Now we're letting the
It
seniors
doesn't
in, now we're
really-
gonna let the instruments in, and
Yeah, my
Jen's got
concern
a
is
point
that,
too
you
about,
know, if people are coming to a basketball game to watch basketball, they know kind of what they're getting into. And the players, are playing basketball, understanding that that's what they're doing, they have their masks on the whole time, et cetera, et cetera. And so if we introduce another thing that's happening in that gym at the same time, I feel like we need to tell people that before we just
Yeah.
say, you know, and particularly other schools that, hey, you know, are you okay if we have our pep band play? And I don't know how you would, you know, then they're probably gonna say, well, okay, we wanna take it to our administration and then to their boards and see what they think, and it's just kind of a process like everything's been lately, but, which I understand, but, you know, so, yeah, whereas if you have a band concert and you say, okay, whoever wants to come to this band concert can come, the people that are coming understanding they're going to a band concert. Yeah, I don't know.
well, it's definitely safer to, unfortunately, to just say, probably not a good idea at this point. It's a good point that we do need to stay consistent with the other teams, you know.
Yeah, and I think if it's something that's brought up in the future at one of your meetings, Kent, that people are saying, hey, we'd like to expand a little bit, you know, then I think we could revisit it, but I agree, it'd be hard to
all right, pause button.
throw that on.
Yeah, the pause button is a good
Good.
answer, I think.
Yeah, and in the spring for football games, I think that's a different conversation.
That'll be outside.
You know, it's
Yeah.
outside, it's, you know, they can be well removed from everybody else, and I'm sure at that time, the other schools will be talking about it too, so, yeah.
Never had pep band for baseball or softball, that'd be fun.
We never have, but not so we can, you know.
I mean, why not start?
For track.
Out in the middle for track, there you go. On the football
Like
field
play
for
the
track.
chariots of fire.
All right, let's move on to item 2 of the discussion on job postings to fill retiree positions.
Yeah, just looking at a timeline, potentially to post those jobs. So the danger of posting early is you might get the broadest net cast. But being a small school, and we've had this happen to us before, people accept the position only to continue interviewing. And then they take the best available job, and then they tell you that they aren't interested in your job any longer, but thank you. And here's your breach of contract fee, and I'm taking this job because this new job is closer to where I really want to be, pays a little better, and they're paying you the breach contract fee anyway, so it doesn't cost me anything. There are some dangers associated with being first out of the gate, but there are also some advantages. If you know that you have people who are local, who are interested in applying for those jobs, you don't necessarily want them, if they really want to work for you, you don't want them going someplace else. You want to, get them interviewed and get them on board and not make them wait. give them some known security that they're the candidate that you're interested in. So my preference would be to get moving on this in February and get things out there and see what we have for candidates for guidance and for our special ed position. I think the fourth grade position, we have to just hit the pause button. The third grade class is very small. And we have the potential to use some of CARES 2.0 to maybe reduce class size as an option in the next year, but we have some other internal administrative discussions that revolve around that we have to figure out before I would feel comfortable posting that, so. But the other two I would like to move forward with in February if the board is in agreement with that.
Okay, sounds like a good idea. All right, discussion item number 3, wrestling format. Now we're saying.
I'll pass this one on.
So the WIA, if you remember correctly, came out at the beginning of the winter sports season and said that they wanted duels only. And they wanted 6 calendar days between each duel. So basically you got 1 duel a week and there were 7 weeks, so you got 7 duels. Well, weather events, different things happen, obviously, as we know, across the state. And I think that the WIA has since said that triangulars or quads are now acceptable. I know that we had talked about that we were just gonna do duels. We did run into a situation with a school in our conference that we weren't able to wrestle them at the beginning of the year because they hadn't been approved to start winter sports yet. And then we were supposed to wrestle them over Christmas break and that got snowed out. And so we're in a situation now where if we're going to be able to wrestle all of our teams in our conference, the last, on January 21st, a week from tomorrow, that would need to be a quad in order for us to do that. So that would be our last last regular season meet of the year. The WIA is also talking about a regionals type of an event. I don't have great detail on that yet, but there is going to be some sort of a postseason. So anyway, it's more of a discussion. The WIA Medical Advisory Committee has said it's okay to have a quad, and when I say quad, it's really just a set of duels. So there'd be a duel upstairs, there'd be a duel downstairs, then the teams would rotate and they would just wrestle a different team. So each wrestler would wrestle a maximum of 3 kids a night, but more likely not that many, depending on the weight class and the teams that are here. So the teams that would come on that night, that quad, would still be conference teams. It'd be Peck Argyle, North Crawford, DeSoto, and ourselves. So.
Kent, did we lose Jen?
No, she just muted her screen.
Got it.
So yeah, it would just be our conference teams. It's just a way so that we can actually get to wrestle all of our.
So you said we had planned on 7. How many of the matches, if we don't do this, how many of the matches did they have?
So far, we've had 5. Yep, we've had 5. And
how much of the season did the volleyball girls miss?
Yeah, but we get to go back. They get to go back.
They get to go back.
Just remember,
Yeah, they get to go
Oh, I
back.
did not know that, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say, because I've been going to wrestling, there's not many people there. You know, I think
Yeah, I kinda
Ithaca
figured
Weston
that,
was the
yeah.
biggest one, because they had a huge team. But
Is this only high school?
middle
This would be
school.
high school and middle school, because our middle schoolers are wrestling the same schedule as the high schoolers are.
Wow.
So we
But
would
it's
have some middle school
Still
matches
really
in between
small crowd,
in the high school.
yeah.
So,
Like, I think when we went to Hillsborough, there was probably 20 people in the whole gym.
yeah.
Maybe a little, but not many. It was pretty small.
I'm not super familiar with the elementary gym. There's not much there for bleachers.
Yeah, so but there's more than there was, because we actually got our new scoreboards installed last week. So now we're able to not have any fans sitting on the, or any players sitting on the benches. We didn't have any way for wrestling, but, so we'll have chairs on the other side of the gym for basketball games. The wrestling obviously is on the side of the mats. But so the fans can use all of the bleachers. There's not a ton of space, but there is a space for about 15 or 20 home and away fans, 6 feet apart if they sit in pairs, if they come, you know, as a pair of household members. So, yeah, there's not as much as the upstairs, of course, but there's still a little room down there. And the other thing we've been doing and we would continue to do is we have 2 mats in each gym, and so the wrestlers rotate mats. So one weight class wrestles on mat A, and then they move to the other mat while that mat gets cleaned and dried, and then they go back and forth like that. So, anyway, yeah, that's where we're at. We've gotten lots of calls because of, you know, everybody seems to be going to these quads. Hey, do you want to come to our quad? We're going to have 4 teams now. We're going to have 4. Let's get together a list of quads. And, you know, it's like, well, we didn't really say we were doing this, so we wanted just to run it past everybody before we say, hey, you know, this is what we want to do. So, you know, a lot of teams, WIA came out 2 weeks ago and said that you can have these quads. So a lot of schools have been doing these quads every single week, 1 a week. But we just stuck to what our plan was until we wanted to run it past everybody. So, and like I said, it would only be the last week that we would have a quad. So.
Well, I like the way you describe it. It's really 2 separate dual meets.
Yeah.
Upstairs and downstairs.
Upstairs
You don't have 4 teams and fans in one gym at any time, so.
Only
Right.
2 teams and fans, just
Right.
in any one gym anytime, yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I guess based on that, I would think it would be appropriate to go ahead with the quad.
Okay.
And really when you think about it from a contact tracing, I guess, you know, there's more connections from a team, but realistically, if I'm only wrestling 2 people, you know what I mean? My exposure to be quarantined or whatever is really only to those 2 kids. Now, if I got it from one of them and went back, but, you know, on a basketball team, if you're playing, you're exposed to, you know what I mean, everybody. So there's really, I guess, less in some senses in that regard, but,
Can you just like make, you know, like the separate entrances, like so these people only come in through the elementary and these, because there'll be more people in general, right?
Yeah,
Not necessarily,
yeah, you know.
just so they're not intermingling in the hallways.
Right.
much.
Yeah, and the nice part is, well, the nice and the not nice, depending on which side of the winter sports spectrum you fall on. But the wrestling mats will need to be set up ahead of time. So the basketball kids will have to have practice in the morning, so they'll be gone, they'll be out of here. And so each team is gonna get their own locker room, and then they'll just be in there, that's where the team will be, you know? But for the fans, the only difficulty is, you know, once they're here, they'll wrestle their first duel in downstairs or
So
upstairs.
it's not like they're just staying,
But then they're, yes,
they'll
team
switch.
A is gonna have to go up and
Gotcha.
team B is gonna have to go down, and, you know,
Okay, I thought it was like just
yeah.
this group was here and this group was there, got it.
yeah.
I don't really know how wrestling works. I don't see a problem with it. But it's just a discussion, not an action, right?
Well, it is, but it happens next week, so.
Yeah, it's more of a,
So we're not really being asked for permission to do that.
if
Well, we're
anybody has a
kinda,
huge,
but
huge
we're
problem
not-
with it, yeah.
Yeah, and our actual vote before was it was going to be duals only. But as far as the situation is being described, it doesn't seem particularly dangerous, but we are bringing 3 other groups in here.
And they're willing to come, right? They know that the quad is.
Yeah, they've been doing this, they did it one, you know, last
Out of
week.
curiosity, why did it end up here?
We were supposed to host that night anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, Crawford and Tech Argyle were supposed to wrestle at Crawford, and so everybody
And we
decided
needed to wrestle both of them anyway.
we needed to wrestle both of them anyway.
Well, and you've got these shortened seasons, and really, essentially, it's about opportunity. I mean, I think Kent was telling us before, you know, when Dustin was wrestling, it wrestled 33 matches in a season, because you're traveling to these these Saturday events where you're wrestling multiple people, and now really, if we allow the quad, they're gonna get 7 wrestling matches in, if they haven't been.
If they have them every week.
Missed, yeah.
Yeah, if this comes on, yeah.
So, I mean, it is an opportunity that's still significantly less than quote unquote normal, but everything is different than normal. You know, and some of these things happen back and forth, the discussions and AD meetings are set, and then they change, and the agenda's already gone out, and do you change it and add it as an action item, or do you add it as a discussion item? You know, we talk and say, hey, I think we really need to get this to the board, versus just make an administrative decision. So that's kind of how it ended up in a discussion slot instead of things come and go at different times in terms of things. And I know that one of the things Kent said is, hey, this other school's having a quad before the board meeting, and they want to know, can we come? And our discussion was, no, we need to have our board meeting and figure out, you know, where we are.
And I appreciate that too, and I'm sure everyone does. So I guess I don't really see a problem with it.
Anybody vehemently against it? All right.
And finally, number 4, student representation at board meetings.
Yeah, Neil has some policies on this, and as we reviewed policies, we had a discussion about, there's often times where we talk about things like tonight that impact kids, and would it be helpful to have the perspective of a student? The difficulty, I think we've done this in the past, in history, is getting people to show up, kids on a regular basis.
Yep.
And I don't know that with everything that everybody's involved in, all the activities, if it's
Or
always.
Wednesday nights now.
We are on Wednesday, if it's always gonna work, you know, there are, but if we extend it to the student council and we ask them to maybe select somebody, and if the opportunity exists, is that something that the whole board, that we, you know, bring that policy forward, and, you know, that the whole board should support or thinks is a good idea? I guess that was the context of our policy decision or discussion.
I think it sounds great, and you're right, we did do it once in the past that I remember, and you're also right on what the issue was with it. You know, sometimes for students, even if we had 2, you know, have designate more than one, and it's nice if it can be consistent that you get.
I think having a couple of them fresh,
And
and
have a
it'd be
couple.
easy for them then to take, if there was something discussion, them to take that back to the group to discuss. I just think 2 is better than the 1, just as a high school
agree.
student and sitting in a room with adults. It's, you know, and then it's 2 people that have that discussion or whatever they need to talk about, and then I think it's more productive. Good idea.
All right, we can talk to Jen as the student council rep too, and see if we can look at those policies and fashion something that makes sense.
And the other thing I think we came up against last time too, and we tried it for a couple of years, is don't make them all seniors, because it's nice if you have a little continuity and have somebody that can play into it. You know. All right, so January and February schedule of meetings. Policy committee, I'll have to meet, I'm sure.
Who's on policy?
Who's on the Angie?
Brad and I and Jen.
So we're gonna be working with Scott, our Neola rep, this week. Is it something that we could look at like the week of the 25th through the 29th to set a policy meeting, Angie? Is there anything, or the rest of the members, or anything that works that week?
Any night that week works for me.
Wednesdays are good just because they're virtual, so I could probably be here by like 4:15. I don't know what your schedule is, Scott, but.
That might,
7th?
it just gets into the end of my workday. 4:45 would be better.
Yeah.
I sometimes have meetings. So it's the 27th?
Does that work, Jen?
Yeah, it does.
Will?
Can I ask what the public access to committees is? I thought of that after I left Buildings and Grounds last week. We do not live stream committee meetings generally, correct?
Correct.
So access is public can come.
Somebody showed up? Be an observer, I guess. We do publish the meetings and notice them.
So we post, right?
Post, I mean.
So what time are we talking?
I put 4:45 on my calendar, but we could round it to 5 if that works better. I'm flexible.
I'm open. Which one is it?
4:45, fine.
Okay, I think they're saying 4:45.
Okay.
Any other meetings, Doug? Just now?
Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about was as we work towards the publication, an example of our brochure, if that's something we want to have a building and grounds, final approval on, what the timeline would be for publication of that. So I think, on any superintendent's report, I can talk about that. We can maybe schedule a meeting then too, just
Okay.
more consistent with the discussion. Since that's next.
Okay, why don't we just hold off on that then? I guess, yeah, superintendent's report.
Just that there's been a lot of meetings recently on the CARES Act Part 2, as we've been discussing during this meeting, a significant amount for the second part of funding and planning. As we look towards implementation, we asked TCI for some clarifications on potential uses and begin to put together those big picture discussions as it relates to the end of that funding, which is September of 2023. So we have this window that we have to fit the funding and the expenses within. And so just beginning that process, and we'll be bringing that to the board and getting feedback on what works and what doesn't work on those expenses and those plans. We want to make the board aware, we moved an hour of Sarah Wallace's time to the elementary school. Sarah's licensed reading specialist. As we start second semester, we reassigned her extra duty upstairs and have her working with some elementary students downstairs to increase the amount of time that's going into reading intervention with some of our young students. Mrs. Miller is working to set dates for musical performances. She's tentatively scheduled concerts for March 8th and May 7th, working with the calendar with Mr. Minham and Mr. Peterson. I think it's important to, begin planning these events. We don't know where, obviously, anything related to COVID is going to be numbers-wise, whatever, but at the same time, as Kent was saying, we've approved athletics and things have seemed to have gone very well, limited attendance. We could do the same thing with performances. People are signing up, getting 2 tickets to come see a performance. They know that people are going to be singing. They know that people are going to be playing instruments. If they're uncomfortable with that, there's nothing that makes them come. We can certainly distance kids for the playing of instruments for concerts. A plan will come to you that shows you kind of how the music teachers are planning for that and for safety purposes. Obviously, if we do it in the gym where we can space out greater, the acoustics aren't quite as nice as in the auditorium, but it's an opportunity to perform. And so that's what they're looking for. And so we will be bringing a plan back to the board that kind of identifies how those will be held. I began working on setting up another basketball clinic. We did one in 2019 for a date in July. Had to hold one on the coaches that travels and does the clinic, to hold one on his calendar. Again, just planning on limited session sizes. I think last time we did this in July of 19, we did 40 students per session and we filled both sessions. We would be looking to have that to keep the numbers in the gym much lower, and only our own students being able to attend, and hopefully that becomes a non-issue, but we have to start. That's July, it's a long time away, but we still have to plan as if we gotta be careful and working with him to try to get those numbers. So if you see a brochure come out in the future advertising the clinic, it's that's what that's about. And then one of the last couple things here, just a timeline of the brochure development that we want to have for information on the referendum to taxpayers now that we've approved the resolution. We looked at it briefly as we started, Christy and I started putting some things together at our building and grounds meeting. We also think it'd be important, we just need to kind of do timelines here when we want to do a mailing of this brochure out to inform taxpayers. And then my thought was we could have informational meetings at the school on March 17th and March 24th, which would be a couple weeks before the referendum vote. And so people could come in, they could look at the locker rooms, take a tour, look at the mechanical rooms, look at the actual size of the proposed pool as it lays out within the pool, talk to the FIA teachers, answer any questions they might have about what's included in the referendum and what is not. And then also we're going to develop a repository on our website that has more information that doesn't fit on a trifold brochure, more detailed taxing information, and the plans in a larger format, that sort of thing. So just trying to think through the timeline. If people are comfortable with a final version of the brochure between now and our February meeting, we hope to have another building and grounds meeting potentially to take a look at that, modify it, but also taking all board members' feedback on what we're missing, what needs to be included in that. We just took a stab at it. So I think, and we certainly can connect with Kramer Brothers. They said that the pre-referendum stuff they're more than willing to help with, and I'm not sure what the extent of their services involve or what sort of team members they have that can help with that. But I did get some sample language from Kyle back, and I haven't had an opportunity yet to dig into that. I will do that with the attorney shortly, some sample contract language from Kramer's. And then the last thing I had was just, we could circle back to what you guys think about a timeline, just that the softball scoreboards were also, we had them installed. And as part of that, the installer said, I think you need one on the softball field. He said, you're gonna be able to see this from everywhere. And because they're huge, they're 4 foot by 12 foot. And he said they have was it 18 degree?
18.
You're within 18 degrees of it, you can see it very clearly. So I said, as long as we can see from wherever we are, if the first base dugout can see it, the third base dugout can see it, and all the fans can see it where they're gonna sit, then we can update our baseball field with the other scoreboard. And so that's exactly what we did. We had them install a new scoreboard on the baseball field. We just switched internally how we coded that. We coded that to Griffin funds. That left a little bit more money for tree removal in the softball house fund. So if you remember, Kent was saying that our baseball field would have been the last one that was not remote control, right?
Wireless.
Wireless,
Yeah.
that's the word I'm looking for. And so the ability to upgrade and put that one up there worked out really nice. We went up and Aaron and I took a walk to go up and take a look at that when they were pouring the cement for that, so. That looked nice. But anyway, regarding the brochure, and that's all I have, but just where timeline-wise and if those 2 dates for informational meetings are enough, or if you, I know we did a couple of them when we did the HVAC and energy stuff, and we didn't have a ton of people show up. But I think having 2 different options is important for people if the day doesn't work. Interested in your thoughts and timelines and process.
Yeah, I guess, open houses or public input sessions are a great idea. And 2, certainly, in a minimum to provide ample opportunity for folks to attend. I guess one thing I'd suggest, and you may have already done this, Doug, is to talk with administrators of districts who've already gone through a successful referendum. Like at Lafarge, they hit a home run with theirs recently, and just see what community outreach or engagement, promotional type things they think tended to resonate with residents. Maybe there's some other tools that I'm not thinking of.
I've gathered samples from other districts, and it depends on what they're going for. If you're going for operational, then you tend to focus on operational. If you're going for capital, you know, some districts focus a lot on the needs of the district, long-term, in their promotional materials. Some districts are focused a lot on taxation impact. We have got this debt coming off, this is an opportunity. So it really depends on, it's a situation-specific kind of a thing for districts. Some have focused a lot on their process that they utilized along the way to get to the referendum, which, you know, of course, we could try to put in informational brochure too then, but then it's not gonna be a trifold. If you wanna back up and talk about all the meetings that have been held to gather input, and the community survey that was done, and the timing of that, and kind of walk people through a process.
I'm not sure any of that is all as valuable as just the information and maybe some pictures of what it's supposed to look like.
But let me just say, that's an example of what some districts have done. They've tried to outline their process they went through, and so there's lots of different ways. It's really about what do we want to focus on? You know, one of the things, obviously there's other pictures of our current locker room setup that we could include. It's just you have limited space in a trifold, but we could certainly direct people to our website. That wouldn't require them then to physically come in, and we could, you know, have a
I think if we can
dedicated
get
spot.
people, the informational kind of meetings would probably be the most valuable thing we can do, if we just get people here, because I think, especially in the locker room areas. And I saw Lafarge's materials on election day when they were at the polling place. They were left there from a previous meeting, and you know, they concentrated on how old different parts of the building were and when the last time anything had been done to them and that sort of thing. And they were done well, I thought.
Do a video tour too, Doug.
That might not be a bad idea.
Yeah, that'd be good with the iPad. Maybe put that, nest that on the website. Like that.
I would suggest though, before you start putting stuff on the website, is to go onto the website, clean up all the old stuff and get it off of there. Because it's really interesting what you'll find on the pool stuff. Like there's some really old stuff on there that can confuse people if you don't clean it all up. Just a suggestion.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. It brings to mind the last time I was on there, the old plans were still on there that were out in the survey. And right now there's one plan, and any mention of another plan should be gone. Or at least not there to confuse people.
Right.
I agree. We'll concentrate on getting some things uploaded there and getting it cleaned up and begin to make it very easily. We've heard this feedback, just get there and has to jump out at you and be one click away. Pool referendum there.
Right.
Now that we have an action item that actually approved that we are having a referendum, we'll make that a point of emphasis here to get that done soon.
And I forget his name, but the representative from Kramer's was here. I remember when he was talking about the services they provide to support referenda. Whatever slide he had up was pretty. And I remember thinking, ooh, that's pretty.
Yeah. Let's get
But I
that.
can't remember what it was.
Yeah,
no.
love that.
But maybe they do have some additional tools.
Well, I know they did Sauk Prairies, and the video they did for what they're doing there, they're just starting the project now, but they did a virtual tour thing of what it would look like
Maybe that was it.
before. I don't know if and maybe that's something that the district actually paid for too, because that was pretty,
Well, and our construction date's a long ways away, so we haven't fine-tuned the designs and don't even have the construction
so it won't
documents
be, it won't
written,
be
so
quite
it's,
as,
yeah, it wouldn't be quite as detailed as that.
but even sort of a general thing showing community entrance, showing, pool, the other area.
Yeah, and I think that's we did this with an approach that ISG was gonna charge us very little on the front end. If you remember the pricing about the different architects, that $17,500 to develop initial plans, and then a significant more amount was made up in the construction document phase of their cost estimates. They were certainly the most cost-effective bid we had, but they were structured differently. So when I went back to them and asked them, can we get the 3D visual of what the pool might look like? Can we get the 3D visual of what the multi-purpose room? Yep, we can get those to you. But we have to remember too that if we ask for some sort of more involved, there's gonna be a cost because we didn't pay for that. We paid for the ability to work through the design and get us the estimates, construction estimates to not only operate it, but to build it and work with us through a process of designing it. And then we have kind of I think we've hit our ceiling of free services, and not to say that we shouldn't spend the money, but it's going to probably come with a cost.
We need to know what it would be, yeah.
And we're up against a timeline. I don't know if they could turn around and give us something that involved in a short period of time, but I can certainly ask. That's all I have.
Are we gonna schedule a building and grounds or no?
Oh, yeah. So
We certainly can, if we wanna, give final
Okay.
approval before the board meeting, or I shouldn't say final approval, more input before the board meeting and of the design of the brochure. I would think that a timeline that I had was, working with the same firm that we worked with, that School Perceptions referred us to. Christy and I looked at that a little bit today. To get the mailing lists, it comes with a cost to get your mailing list so that you're blanketing your district with the brochure prior to the referendum to give them the information. There's some time in there, so I would think that our February board meeting, we're gonna have to give us a thumbs up so we get this thing mailed. But
Yeah.
you wanna go with a different timeline, I mean, that's.
As far as your, no, I think that sounds fine, and your dates for open house things, I guess I don't see a problem with that either. If that's the 17th and the 24th, I'm assuming the election is April 5th, so, you know, you could only push that back 1 week at the most, so that's fine, those are Wednesday nights, so. I think that's good.
Yeah, it's Tuesday's April 6th, so we don't.
And as far as the mailing too, we, you know, I don't know what the timing on that should be, if we needed advice on, you know, you don't want to get it too early, but you don't want to wait till the last minute, and if there's going to be a significant amount of absentee ballots again, those go out quite early, so.
Well, my thought was, our board meeting's on the 9th. If we have to then work with our, or the 10th, excuse me, if we have to then work with our company that, you know, gives us our mailing routes and, or addresses, et cetera, and in the past, we actually used with the school perceptions, we used the printing company that was associated with the mailing addresses, and they shot them out. There's gonna have to be some time involved there. So that means that maybe if that takes a week, then they're being sent out, you know, the last week of February, with 3 weeks till the first informational date. So if you had a preference about when you would want them to reach people's mailboxes, we could work backwards from that once we work with the company. So back to your question is, when do you want them to hit mailboxes versus when the informational meetings are? And then we can work with the company to make that happen and work backwards from a timeline. What's the best thought about when people should get the information?
Yeah, that.
You know, is it the beginning of March, 1 month before the referendum, they get their first flyer on the cost and have opportunities to come to the, I mean, it's not like this has been something that hasn't been talked about for a long time. We've been talking about it forever, so I don't think there's a ton of people that are unaware, but at the same time, the taxing impact is laid out and what's all involved.
You know, thinking about those public information sessions, having led a whole bunch of them at the DNR on really contentious issues, we're always careful to structure them so information flows in the right direction and we get the results we want. At this point, you know, we're presenting information, right? The plan's not gonna change. We're not going back to a former design. So there's a risk, unless we design this right, that people come wanting to complain that this wasn't the design they wanted, and they stand up and instead of asking questions, we're back to 6 months ago where it becomes contentious again. So when you get a bunch of people in a room, there's always the chance that opposing views, and you know what I mean, we're gonna get back to, I don't like this because this is what we have. And you're gonna get a chance to vote on it. And we might wanna be very deliberate that these are information sessions where you can learn about the new pool design.
That's a good way.
And make sure it's not that attendees know it's not a chance to come deliberate or get back to where we were much past. As best as we can communicate that softly and nicely.
I think that's absolutely the direction that we need to go because, yeah, there's gonna be tours. I think there's lots of people that talk about the pool and their only idea of what the pool is what they see when they pass through the locker room and go sit in the pool. Well, they need to look at the mechanical rooms. They need to look at the shape of them over 50 years. They need to look at the front of the storefront, which leaks and then leaks down into the basement. They need to look at the cracks in the pool. If they're interested in that stuff and that's why they're coming, they need to look at the shape or the size of the pool that's going to go in the vessel. They need to know the size of that multi-purpose room as it lays out within the existing pool structure. They need to look at the locker rooms. They need to get a sense that they haven't really been touched for 50 years in terms of their design and function. Those are things that people need to see. And then we can come back here and we can talk about, this is the taxing impact. Here is our debt schedule. Here is when debt falls off. Here is the first 8 years before aid kicks in. You can get more detail than the average, which is listed on the brochure. And I think we can give it some structure and we can give it some detail. I don't, at this point, we can't debate, there's no, this is on the ballot. We want you to get information about what you're voting on.
Yeah, and I think maybe what Scott's saying is be very clear, like, as he was wording it there and as you just did, that this is to present the final design that we'll be voting on in April, and, just always keep presenting it that way.
And it's an invitation to come learn
Right.
about the plan that's been accepted. It's not an invitation to come
Just one.
revisit yesterday.
Do we want to schedule a buildings grounds meeting between now and the next board meeting?
You think, Earl?
Probably really wouldn't have to, would we? If we're just gonna go with what we got, but you talked about putting a little something so we can make a video on the website.
Yeah, I mean, I have to defer to Kent because he's the guy with the tech skills. So, I mean, if he says that he thinks that would work and he can help facilitate it, then we do it.
Because I think that'd be probably
We can do
the best way to show it so people can see what we do have that's old. And I mean, then if they want to come and see it the 17th or 24th, they got some idea what they're actually going to be looking at, not just.
Well, that's true. If we put a video out ahead, plug the community forums, your chance to come and, or don't call it community forum, your chance to come and learn about.
See it right up close. I mean, you put it out there in the video, you can see it, but if, okay, you want to come and see actually what, how kind of bad the locker rooms are or that, you can come then on the 17th or 24th.
But do we need a buildings and grounds committee meeting? Doug mentioned looking at the brochure. I guess if that's the only thing we'd be looking at, you could certainly just send that out, maybe
Yeah, we
not to
can
the
do it.
building, and
We can
maybe
do
to
it.
everybody, the whole board, and let's get some feedback on that.
Pretty much this brochure is what we're going with.
Well, he's gonna talk to Kramer
Well,
too,
yeah,
and we'll
well-
see, and even if they just have the graphic people to take this and do no offense, do a professional layout of it. I mean, that would be,
And I don't know what they have for.
I have no idea, I'm just,
Guess you find out what they can come up with or do, and then we can go from there then.
because if that's the only reason that we'd be meeting, I agree, I don't.
Is the board, I mean, there are firms that do publications for you. And you hire them and you tell them, these are the things that we're doing, and they develop it. Is that a direction you want to go? Obviously, Kramer's has said, I don't know the extent of what they offer each.
Well, depending on how much help we get from them, I guess that's another possibility. Then we just need an idea of how much.
Right, but we don't have a lot of time. If we're gonna do it, you gotta have to, give me the authority and tell me that's what you want me to do, because, before we know it.
We'll be in here for February.
Yeah,
and
if
we'll
your
still be
decision
going
is an
through this,
action
yeah.
item to hire a firm in February, and you've got, 3 weeks to put it together, the
No,
timeline
That
would be
wouldn't be
awful
enough
tight.
time for that. I have no problem with you checking with Kramer's and then, I don't know, how far do we go, contact and see what
Well, as Scott said, there are plenty of firms that other school districts have utilized as part of their, you know, some don't, some just put together a very similar brochure and mail it out. I've seen some that aren't trifolds, they're just like a, what do you call it, like the school newsletter, you know? And they mail it out, it's a couple pages and that's what they send out to their taxpayers. They don't wanna invest money in a service, they just wanna get the information out, and everybody's different. Everybody approaches it in a different way. And a lot of it depends on the size of the referendum. If you're remodeling a whole building, you're probably gonna wanna do something real professional and lay it out because it's a much bigger project, so.
Honestly, as we sit here listening, this has been a big enough issue for a long enough period of time. Folks know what's going on. I mean, I think most district residents who are gonna show up and vote have been part of this process.
Right, with the community survey and things especially.
I don't know how much additive value, you know, we'll add by investing more dollars.
Yeah,
And I think we need to do the basics, the information sessions, the brochure, maybe some other things, but I don't know if we really have to stretch too far.
Yeah, because I mean, just
I'm
looking
okay
at
with
this, I feel like I mean, you might want to do it a little, tweak some of the things or whatever, but it's pretty basic, and then you want to learn more, then you come to the sessions, that's how you roll.
Or you go online.
Yeah, or online.
And if we nest the video and do the other things and have a lot of information, and that was the argument before was, how come you don't have everything on the website where you just go there and you promote the referendum? Well, we hadn't decided we were going to referendum yet, so it's a little difficult to put the cart in front of the horse. But now that we have a resolution that says we are moving forward, within a week, I think we can turn it around and put everything that needs to be on the website and start working on that video. That, gives people a walking tour of it, and then if they wanna come in, and I'm not saying the walking tour is gonna be done in a week, but we can clean it up and put the plans on there and put some of the pictures on there, the stills of what the current space looks like, and give a walking tour with explanations of what's included. I think we could easily do that.
All right, let's leave it at that then. It's, I think Scott was probably right too, about how much added value would we get, so.
All right. At the last is the principals.
Principals reports.
All right, just a few things. School's off to a good start, 3 days in. It's been nice to see kids' faces and have kids back in the building and have a sense of normalcy and a little bit of things, so that's been good. We have, I would say, probably around 25 fewer kids that are fully virtual than we did the first time around, so I think definitely some of those kids miss being in school and wanting to be back, but so far things are off to a good start, and again, it was, in some days, it was a lot of new things, remembering, because it had been a while, but it's been good, which is really good. So at our January 6th in-service, we spent some time on SEL, social emotional learning, for the board goal to look at some things, not only with staff, students, and directions to head, and how to assess that and take some steps to address that, and better things that we can do to improve some of those areas. And other than that, we have a graduation day right now, which is great. And within that, I will start probably by the next board meeting, senior exit interviews, to get some feedback. Last year was kind of a strange and crazy year, so some of that feedback has always been helpful to direct where we go as far as different things with curriculum and, just culture in the building and different thoughts, so that's a good thing. So other than that, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Any questions or anything from anyone?
How many students did elect to stay virtual?
What's that?
How many students did
We
elect?
have, I think, as of the other day, there were 42.
All virtual.
So. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm really excited that the backpack program has kind of morphed into a servant leadership project for Mr. Schroff and his students. So they're going to be taking over the bulk of the work. Pastor Lori has been key during virtual to continue making sure that the backpacks were delivered, but we do have quite a few families. And Mr. Schrock and his students will do a great job with that. I just wanted to mention too about the in-service. It really was an opportunity for the adults to strengthen their self and social awareness. And they were commenting on how they felt that was, they felt valued, feeling like their social and emotional growth was also key as we go forward. And then whenever you have the adults who have that awareness and opportunity to strengthen, it goes into their classrooms as well. And we had an essay contest from some ladies in Richland Center, What the Flag Means to Me. And the two winners came from Kickapoo, and they read their essays on the radio. So Barrett Williams and Lexi Andrews were the winners. Margaret Brunner, I can't do your last name, just commented that the quality of work from these students was always top notch, she says. So I want to, if you don't mind, I'm going to read their words really quickly. I just think they're kind of precious. So this is by Lexi. What the flag means to me. To me, the flag means respect. Every time I say the Pledge of Allegiance, I think about all the people that fought in the military. Saying the pledge is a way of giving back and respecting our veterans and our military. Many people died just to save America. This makes me so sad. I am very thankful to not live in the times of the horrible war and wars that we have had in our country's history. If I could, I would go back in time and I would fight in the military. Our military people are the reason why we are the land of the free and the home of the brave. It is because of this fact that we all need to do our part. Stand together and respect our red, white, and blue. The flag is a beautiful symbol. I hope she will always wave bravely and proudly. This is what the flag means to me. And that was Lexi. And this one is Barrett. The flag means saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Those words mean a lot to all of us because of the freedom that comes with it. I am so proud when our class stands to say the Pledge of Allegiance. It makes me feel good inside. When I say the pledge, I see the soldiers in the flag. I see them fighting hard for our freedom. That vision really makes me proud. I am sad that these soldiers had to die, but I'm happy that they believed in the future and the rewards that come with being an American. I really love the freedom that we have. If the soldiers were here, I would tell them thank you very much. I would love to meet them and have the honor of shaking their hands. I would ask all about the war and our history. I wish I could see the times when we won the war and gained us freedom. This is what the flag means to me. So, and I think that's kind of what I wanted to end with. Next, we're coming towards the end of January and we'll be taking our FASFRD assessments. And then I'll be compiling that and then sharing that AGR report with you in February. So, any other questions for me?
Thank you both.
What's up, for grade of the Yes, yes.
I think Emily did that. She read on the radio.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
that's right.
Okay, well, thank you, Kim and Aaron. And I guess we've come to the point where we need to convene to close session, Wisconsin State Statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. The purposes tonight are the 2022-23 administrative contract rollovers, food service position, one-time longevity pay for retirees, elementary basketball coordinators, and volunteers. We have a motion to move to closed session.
I'll make a motion, we convene closed session.
I'll second that.
So that motion was by Earl and seconded by Tricia to convene to closed session.
Okay. Angie Eggy,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Janet
How fast aren't you tonight?
What's that, Earl?
How fast are you tonight? It's gonna be morning before you get done there.
Does this mean Sandy's gonna disappear because we're going?
You think somebody's still up?
I don't think anybody's still up, and if they are, kudos to them.
We're good, Janet, thank you.
Okay, so we are back in open session and we do have some motions that need to be made following our closed session.
I'll make a motion that we roll over the administrative contracts to 22-23.
I'll second that
She's
motion.
specific.
Oh, for Kim and for Aaron?
I'll second that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Earl and seconded by Tricia to roll over the administrative contracts for Kim Johnson and Aaron Midham. All in favor?
Roll call.
Roll call. That's right, we're back on it.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Angie Eggy,
Yes.
Janet Mathis,
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the one-time longevity pay for the retirees that were spelled out in the benefit.
I'll second that.
So again, we have a motion by Earl and seconded by Tricia to approve the one-time longevity pay for our retirees.
I gotta get another page here. Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Angie Eggy,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes.
Motion to approve Eric Wiggle and Mike Kaufman for the elementary basketball coordinators.
I'll second that.
Are we including volunteers too?
We don't know them at all. Or do you want me to include them?
We don't know the names of the volunteers. We had some of them that we're guessing, but we need to firm that up.
So that's what I
gotcha.
thought.
You're good.
Just those two.
So-
Okay, Scott Walter,
Wait,
Yes.
we got a second now. So
Yes,
the-
I already seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Go ahead, Christie, sorry.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Angie Eggy,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes.
And make a motion to post the position of business manager.
I'll second that.
Okay, so again, a motion by Earl and seconded by Tricia to post the position for business manager.
Earl Wallace,
Yes.
Angie Eggy,
Yes.
Jennifer Bielhauer,
Yes.
Tricia Clements,
Yes.
Teresa Gander,
Yes.
Scott Walter,
Yes.
Janet Mathis.
Yes.
I think that's
That
everything.
concludes our
concludes all that.
motions. All right, we do have a list here, audience to visitors and board members. Nothing, so do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I so moved.
Motion by
I'll
Scott,
second
seconded by Tricia, I guess, to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for being here.